An apocalypse breaks out in the world, and vile, bloodthirsty zombies appear all over. Amid the chaos and carnage, our protagonist, Ye Jongming, feels entirely out of place in this mad, apocalyptic world. He had long harbored thoughts about the collapse of the apocalyptic world and met his end at the hands of his teammates. Let's dive into the world of 10 years ago. There was a massive change in the world. 90% of humanity had become bloodthirsty mutants. As mutants rapidly infect humans en masse, mysterious wheels descended from the sky. Humans soon discovered crystals in zombies' heads, which could be used to spin the wheels and extract various materials, including weapons, gene medicine, and even supernatural abilities. Desperate to survive, human forces fought relentlessly for these wheels, turning the world into a brutal survival game. Zhong chose to obey to stay alive, even if it meant abandoning his principles. After a decade of grueling training, he finally earned his place on the elite monster fighting team. He believed his hard work would lead to a brighter future, but instead, it ended in betrayal and death at the hands of his own teammate. Just when he thought it was over, he woke up next to Bai Shi, a girl who died long ago, in the very house he lived in before the apocalypse. Naked and disoriented, he realizes it's September 10th, 2220, the day before the apocalypse began. As memories of the monstrous apocalypse flood his mind, he grapples with the horror of reliving that nightmare. But then, a spark of determination ignites within him. He recalls the 10 years of survival skills and combat experience he acquired. This rebirth may be his chance to rewrite his fate. With his mind made up, he vows to use his knowledge to navigate the impending chaos and live his life with newfound purpose and strategy. The story of Ye Zhongming begins anew, fueled by vengeance and a fierce will to change his destiny. He quickly dressed, ignoring the girl on the bed who asked where he was going. He yanked open the drawer and stared at the inheritance his parents had left him. In his previous life, he never used their luxury card, but with the apocalypse looming, he knew money would soon be worthless, so he had to use it now. Feeling snubbed, the girl raised her voice, demanding answers. He didn't hold back. He bluntly told her he knew about her affair with Qinjun. Her face flushed with embarrassment and guilt. She fell silent, unable to meet his eyes. In his last life, when the apocalypse erupted, he used every method to protect her, but was betrayed in return. She chose to rely on Qinjun, leaving him behind. She now claimed he had no right to ridicule her and Qinjun, accusing him of being jealous of Jun's looks and strength and calling him a clown. Despite their past, he gave Shai one last warning. Qinjun wasn't someone she could trust. He knew telling her that Jun would sell her for merely 3 cans of food wouldn't change her mind, so he didn't bother. Deciding not to waste more time on her, he focused on preparing medicine, food, and equipment. Meanwhile, she kept shouting that she was the one who abandoned him, insisting he wasn't leaving her and that she had chosen to leave him first. The scene shifts to a taxi, where he thrusts a pile of cash at the driver and demands a speedy trip to the nearest hospital. He swiftly gathers a stack of medicines at the hospital and stuffs them into a bag, knowing these supplies will be rare and incredibly valuable in the coming apocalypse. As he leaves the hospital, a woman accuses him of being an intruder and stealing. He says that the money for the medicines is on the counter, adding he has no time for further clarification, because people would only believe him once they meet the upcoming danger. He then hurries to an outdoor gear shop, methodically purchasing various defensive tools and gearing up from head to toe. Just as he's about to finalize his payment, he notices a machete on the weapons counter that resembles one he used in his past life. Without hesitation, he decides to buy it for 10 times the price, confident it will be invaluable. He left the shop confidently, unaware that the shopkeeper was secretly pleased, having duped him into paying 10 times the item's actual value. But the fool was oblivious to the looming danger ahead. After gathering everything he needed, he hopped into a taxi. The driver, enticed by the money, sped off, with the car racing towards Heyday Mansion, just a short distance away. He recalled from memory that the Apocalypse Wheel, also known as the Trade Wheel, the sole source of resources for survivors, should be located there. He needed to act quickly to secure the most vital equipment and special abilities it offered. He promised the taxi driver an extra $300 if he could get him to Heyday Mansion in 5 minutes. The driver quickly shifted gears, telling him to hold on tight. Racing down the road, the driver narrowly avoided hitting a pedestrian. As the driver sped ahead, his mind raced, remembering if he'd overlooked anything. Suddenly, it hit him. The Apocalypse Wheel, also known as the Trade Wheel. This was the sole source of survival resources. Water, food, equipment, and even special abilities. All could only be obtained by spinning that wheel. He needed to be the first to reach it. According to his memory, the first Apocalypse Wheel should be near the Heyday Mansion, but the taxi was stopped at the entrance to the high-end area. Undeterred, he instructed the driver to force their way through, promising to cover any damages. The driver complied and charged ahead while the alarmed policeman called for reinforcements. The car soon arrived at a desolate area and stopped slowly. Before getting out, he suggested the taxi driver stop and leave the area. He added that the driver should head to places with fewer people afterward. As he stepped out, guards chasing them quickly apprehended him. Noticing his calm demeanor, one guard mentioned that a taxi had smashed through their guardrails and accused him of trying to flee. The policeman warned him not to act dumb. Despite the situation, he remained composed and was told to look above in the sky, but a massive rumbling sound grew louder before the policeman could ask where, and he had no chance to reply. Slowly, an era-transcending battleship appeared, causing the policeman's expressions to shift from anger to sheer fear. Zhang felt a cold sweat as the scene mirrored precisely what happened 10 years ago. He wondered why the creator had left the wheel behind and forced people into conflict. Determined to change his fate, he seized this opportunity to become stronger and strike back. As the space battleship slowly approached, people who had no clue what was coming kept taking pictures to share online. But he knew better. He could tell it was only a matter of moments before the attack began. Seizing the chance, he turned and ran, using his martial arts to move swiftly. As he ran, he recalled that the attack would last 5 minutes. In that time, the world would descend into a living hell. In no time, he reached the door of a nearby villa. He rang the doorbell, posing as a delivery man. He remembered that the first wave of apocalyptic wheels would soon appear. Once the battleship ceased their assault, the wheels would descend. When the electric gate buzzed open, he slipped inside without hesitation. The woman inside, undeniably charming in her appearance, eyed him with suspicion. She insisted he wasn't a delivery man and demanded to know who he was. She warned him to leave or she would call the police. But he stood still, ignoring her words, knowing she had no combat skills and was completely unaware of the looming danger. Just as the woman was about to protest further, a loud explosion erupted outside, followed by terrified screams. His stomach tightened as he saw the massive space battleship releasing a fleet of giant vessels that crashed into cars and buildings. Curious onlookers moved closer, unaware of the threat, only to see the vessels split open, releasing a green mist that shot toward them. Within seconds, those caught in the fog transformed into terrifying undead. One man tried to save a friend, but it was too late. The friend had already turned into a deadly zombie who attacked him without mercy. For him, who had lived through the apocalypse, the chaos outside was nothing new. The lady, however, was visibly shaken by the screams and destruction. Her eyes wide with fear, she demanded that he leave her house immediately, clearly unsure of his intentions. But he, unfazed by her panic, ignored her and noticed a strange glimmer coming from the kitchen. Without hesitation, he rushed towards it and found himself staring at a massive golden wheel that had mysteriously appeared before him. Curious and anxious, the lady followed him into the kitchen, only to be stunned by the sight of the enormous wheel. At the center of the wheel was a gray crystal, indicating it was the one-rank, one-crystal wheel. Despite that, he felt a wave of satisfaction wash over him. He knew even a one-crystal wheel could offer something valuable. But the woman beside him was filled with doubt. How could something like this just appear out of nowhere? He wasn't concerned with her skepticism. He focused on the rewards within the wheel. He spotted a strengthening drug that could boost a person's strength 2- or 3-fold. But there was a problem. He had no crystals to activate the wheel. As he examined the wheel closer, he noticed something unusual. Typically, level 1 wheels only required 5 crystals, but this one needed 7. This difference made him confident there was something even more valuable hidden within. After another look, he spotted the prize, a lucky card. The lady, puzzled by his muttering, finally asked what he was talking about. He explained that a lucky card could enhance a person's unique abilities, such as improving their physical strength or granting them a companion beast. In the back of his mind, he wondered why this woman hadn't turned into a zombie yet. It could mean she had some resistance to the poison. He began to think she might be helpful, perhaps even a reliable assistant in the future. But the woman wasn't convinced by his explanation. She still eyed him suspiciously. He pointed out to the lady that the screaming outside had suddenly stopped. Her eyes widened with surprise as she realized something terrible must have happened. Ignoring the danger, she decided to step outside and see for herself. He knew this was a fatal mistake. The silence meant that most of the screaming humans had already turned into mutants, no longer able to cry out. As she cracked open the door, an undead creature lunged at her. She stumbled back, crashing to the ground, struggling desperately to fend off the snarling monster. But it quickly overpowered her, pinning her down. Just as it seemed she was done, a flash of light sliced through the air, and the undead's head rolled away. Dazed, the lady looked up to see him standing over her, his machete gleaming with fresh blood. He had saved her in the nick of time. He bent down and pulled a crystal from the monster's head. The lady stared at it, suddenly realizing it looked exactly like the one on the mysterious wheel in her kitchen. 2 more undead creatures charged toward the open door before she could fully process what had just happened. She screamed a warning, telling him to look behind him. In an instant, he spun around, facing the 2 undead head-on. With a quick, fluid motion, he leaned out of their reach and slashed once, taking both creatures down in a single deadly strike. The lady watched in shock, her heart racing as she realized just how lethal he indeed was. He had seemed like just an ordinary guy to her, but now she saw the brutal efficiency with which he handled the mutants, and it left her speechless. In her shock, the lady asked for his name. After introducing himself, he extended a hand, pulled her to her feet, and then asked for her name in return. When she answered, his eyes widened in disbelief. She was Mu Xinfei, the rumored 9-star expert from his past life, the legendary figure who could single-handedly face entire divine armies. Yet here she was, just a delicate girl, far from the mighty existence he had known. Still shaken by his reaction, Xinfei pressed him for answers, demanding to know what was happening outside. He didn't hesitate, and bluntly informed her that Earth had been invaded. As she could see, most people had already turned into zombies. He explained that while he didn't yet know who was behind the invasion, a few people around the world, like the 2, hadn't been infected. He also mentioned that he had been collecting crystals from the heads of the undead, showing her the tiny, shimmering objects that were the key to survival in this new world. After listening to his detailed explanation, she grasped the dire situation outside and suggested they seek help from the government or military. But he shook his head, explaining that those entities likely collapsed within minutes of the attack. As far as he could tell, the entire Earth had become a playground for the undead. His mind raced with calculations. If Xin had become an N-star expert in his past life, she must have possessed some extraordinary traits that were still hidden. He needed an assistant, and she seemed like the perfect candidate. So, he decided to teach her the survival rules of this new undead world. First, he explained, were the wheels that humanity relied on to survive the apocalypse. Most supplies came from them, but activating a wheel required crystals extracted from the heads of the undead. The more valuable the wheel's rewards, the more crystals it needed. She, being sharp, quickly caught on that there must be more wheels out there. But her curiosity improved, and she asked how he knew all this. He didn't want to reveal that he had been reborn, so he swiftly changed the subject, suggesting she try spinning the wheel while he hunted zombies outside. Turning to leave, he paused at the door and gave her a stern warning to shut the door tightly behind him and, under no circumstances, to go outside. With that, he stepped out, preparing to face the undead once more, leaving her to process everything she had just learned. On the street, the undead wandered aimlessly, their groans filling the air. One of them seemed to sense something, turning its head just as he drove a blade into its skull. Sensing fresh prey, several other undead charged at him, but he was no easy target. His movements were quick and precise, his body agile as he weaved through the mass of rotting bodies. With practiced ease, he delivered powerful thrusts, slicing through the zombies like they were nothing more than overripe vegetables. As the last of them fell, he meticulously collected the crystals from their foreheads. But just as he finished, he heard desperate cries for help from behind him. Spinning around, he saw a girl being chased by 2 undead. Panic etched on her face. She bolted toward him, hiding behind his back in fear. Without hesitating, he stepped forward, meeting the undead head-on. With a swift motion, he brandished his blade, slashing them into mangled flesh with a series of rapid, deadly strikes. But as he turned to check on the girl, her demeanor shifted. She clawed at him frantically, her mouth stretching open in a grotesque scream as she lunged at him. Thankfully, he was ready. In one fluid motion, he reached out, his hand hooking her head and driving his blade straight into her forehead, ending the threat before it could even begin. Xin was amazed when he returned with 11 undead crystals, adding them to the 3 he had already collected. It was just enough for 2 spins on the mysterious metal wheel. With Xin watching curiously, he carefully placed the crystals into the slots individually. As the last crystal disappeared, the wheel began spinning wildly, both watching in anticipation. He silently prayed for some functional medicine as the wheel blurred with speed. When it finally slowed to a stop, the wheel spat out 4 cans of food. He stared at them, feeling a wave of disappointment wash over him. During the apocalypse, canned food was a rare luxury, but it wasn't what he needed now. He wanted something to give them a fighting chance, not just more supplies. To make matters worse, Jin had already organized a large stash of unspoiled food while he was out hunting zombies, enough to last them for a while. Eating canned food at this point felt like a waste of a precious spin. Frustrated by his continued bad luck, he turned to her with an idea, suggesting she give it a try, thinking her luck might be better than his. He handed her the remaining crystals, hoping that the wheel might offer something more valuable this time. Once again, the wheel is about to be activated. The way she placed the crystals, is it just me? Or does she look like she's about to unlock a secret level with that pose? The wheel whirred to life, and both waited with bated breath. He thought each spin at the start of the apocalypse was crucial, as it could rapidly boost combat abilities. But a moment later, he was stunned. This time, the wheel landed on an extremely valuable elimination card. He explained that the card allowed her to eliminate one reward. While it might not seem necessary now, he believed its value would become apparent when spinning for crucial equipment and skills. He looked at her in astonishment and asked if her luck was always this incredible. She shared that she had always been fortunate, whether it was getting extra bottles from soft drinks, winning big prizes from cracking eggs, or even drawing a live cow in a supermarket's lucky draw. This made him, who had been struggling with persistent lousy luck, feel almost depressed. He speculated that Shin's luck might be due to her fortunate physique. Watching her bask in her excitement, he couldn't help but sneer. If she had a winning physique, he was determined to take full advantage of it. Early the following day, he prepared to slay the undead as daylight broke. His goal for the day was to collect 100 crystals. Seeing his confident determination, she decided she couldn't afford to slack off. She resolved to support this great benefactor and make a meal worthy of 100 crystals. After some time, he returned, panting and out of breath. He had 2 pieces of news for her, and asked which she wanted to hear first. She opted for the excellent news. The good news was that the area was now completely overrun by zombies, but he had managed to clear them all out. This impressive update thrilled her, and she eagerly asked for the bad news. The bad news was that he had only collected 21 crystals despite searching the entire area, checking every house, room, and hidden spot. Seeing his slight discouragement, she reassured him that these crystals were still enough for several spins on the wheel. He asked her if there was something to eat, as he was hungry. Soon the dishes were served, but their appearance was likely unappetizing even to dogs. She hesitantly admitted that she wasn't very skilled in cooking, and with a hint of sadness, suggested that if he found the food unpalatable, he could always eat from the cans in the fridge. Despite the less than appealing presentation, he took a large bite and told her it tasted good, even if it looked terrible. Her eyes lit up at his comment, as he was the first person not to reject her cooking. It's because he had survived the apocalypse and had faced far worse, including eating dead human meat, so hunger and thirst were his greatest fears. After finishing his meal, they went to the wheel to use the crystals he had collected. She proved her luck as the wheel rewarded them twice in a row with practical weapons, a gun and a crossbow. She then handed him the remaining crystals, urging him to try it. He shook his head, saying his luck was too poor. Undeterred, she took his hand, blew on it, and with a sincere expression, told him she had transferred her luck to him. Her gesture made him blush, unable to hide his surprise and gratitude. 6 rewards remained on the wheel, with the odds of hitting the enhanced gene medicine now sitting at a slim 1 in 6. She quickly suggested using the elimination card to remove the cookie option, hoping to improve their chances. But before they could reconsider, the discard card touched the wheel and suddenly ignited. His eyes widened in disbelief. Once the card made contact, their decision was set in stone. Now, with a 1 in 5 shot, he knew there was no turning back. Without a moment's delay, he inserted the crystals to initiate the spin. As the wheel started to whirl, both launched into fervent prayers. Whether invoking the Eastern Amitabha or the Western Amun, they called upon every divine power imaginable. As the wheel gradually slowed and the arrow settled on a green potion bottle, their faces lit up as if they had just won the jackpot. Indeed, they had struck gold with the novice body-strengthening potion. This wasn't just any reward. It was a game-changer capable of amplifying the user's combat skills and physical strength by at least 3-fold during the early stages of the apocalypse. In a harsh world where survival was a luxury, a body-strengthening drug like this was nothing short of essential. Excitedly, she urged him to drink the potion immediately. However, he had a different plan in mind. Instead of gulping it down, he carefully combined the strengthening potion with some heparin he had taken from the hospital, pouring both into a tray. He explained to her that mixing the 2 substances could double the potion's volume, effectively transforming 1 bottle into 2. He further elaborated that the wheel they used wasn't unique. Numerous others were scattered in various locations, each equipped with its own set of reward boards. With the additional bottles they'd created, they could trade for valuable skill cards or specialized medicines with other survivors. This strategy enhanced their immediate strength and opened up opportunities for bartering and negotiations, increasing their chances of long-term survival in the apocalypse. Soon enough, the two newly created strengthening potions were sitting before them. She was about to ask him how he knew how to make the medicine. Still, before she could complete, he quickly shifted the conversation, pointing out that the medical water's temperature was too high and needed to be lowered immediately. Then, turning back to her, he emphasized that she should memorize every detail of the process and the correct temperature standards, because it would be her turn to make the potion next time. She nodded, already feeling confident she could handle the task. After finishing the potion making, she couldn't resist asking the same question again about how he knew all this. But before he could answer, they were interrupted by a knocking sound from outside. His expression turned serious as he hushed her, quickly pulling her upstairs. Confused, she asked why he seemed so alarmed. He explained that the sound came from a mutated stink bug. The infectious virus, these locusts had evolved into cannibalistic insects. While they weren't solid individually, they hunted in swarms, and spotting one meant the entire horde was nearby. Sure enough, with just a little effort, the swarm of mutated locusts broke through the door, swarming up the stairs towards them. The two scrambled to use a wardrobe to block the door, but he warned her that these bugs were more dangerous than they seemed. They could even infect plants, turning them into flesh-eating organisms. When they thought they were safe, the banging sounds started again, louder this time. She, startled, instinctively jumped into his arms. He might have thought, "Forget the bug spray. We need some modesty spray here, stat." However, he eased her fears by telling her not to be scared, assuring her that he's there for her, and his words made her feel at ease. Seeing the door battered relentlessly, he realized it wouldn't hold out much longer. He quickly decided to have her hide in the bathroom while he prepared to face the oncoming swarm. When she anxiously asked how he planned to survive against so many, he reassured her it would only take a few minutes. Without hesitation, he pulled out the strengthening potion he had just prepared. Aware of the side effects but knowing it was his best shot, he drank it down without a second thought. As soon as he downed the potion, a wave of excruciating pain surged through his body, sending him collapsing to the ground. He wriggled in agony, feeling like his entire body was on fire. But as the pain threatened to overwhelm him, the mutated beetles finally broke through the door. He crumpled to the floor, but the potion's effects started kicking in. Was this the end for him? Not a chance. In an instant, a flash of steel pierced through the air, impaling one of the beetles. Boosted by the potion's strength, he sprang into action, launching himself at the swarm with lethal precision. His eyes glowed with an eerie red light, making him look like a reaper from the depths of hell. The pain from the drug's side effects was unbearable, driving him to scream in fury as he fought. The mutated beetles swarmed him, but he roared defiantly and charged forward, his blade slicing through them with relentless force. In a frenzy of slashing and stabbing, he tore through the horde, leaving a trail of carnage in his wake. Green mutated blood splattered across the walls and floor as he hacked away at the last of the creatures. Finally, when the previous beetle fell, he was left standing amid the destruction, panting heavily from the exhausting battle, his body trembling from both the fight and the after-effects of the potion. As he surveyed the shattered limbs scattered across the floor, a nagging suspicion crept into his mind. A locust swarm's appearance always signaled a locust queen's presence. The swarm would keep reproducing endlessly if the queen wasn't dealt with. As he pondered this, a massive mutant loomed into view. It was the locust queen. Enraged at the sight of her slaughtered brood, the queen spewed a jet of green liquid at him. Fortunately, he reacted quickly, dodging the acidic spray by a hair's breadth. The liquid sizzled and corroded everything touched, but he wasn't intimidated. As the queen charged at him again, he decided to stop holding back. He leaped into the air in a flash, soaring above the queen before driving his blade down hard into her back. The locust queen let out a bone-chilling shriek of agony, writhing in pain. But he was relentless. He lived by the motto, "Strike when your enemy is weakest." Without hesitation, he twisted the blade handle, then plunged it in deeper. In moments, the queen's strength drained away, and she collapsed to the ground with a heavy thud, defeated. After the battle, he finally staggered over to the bathroom, knowing that the more he pushed himself, the worse the potion's side effects would become. But as soon as he opened the door, Shin leapt into his arms, clinging to him tightly. Despite his exhaustion, he felt a sense of comfort wash over him, and gently told her not to cry, reminding her that tears were the most useless thing in the apocalypse. Slowly, she managed to calm herself, though the shock of being saved from such a nightmare still lingered. But when she turned her head and saw the bloody mess outside, her stomach churned. As she tried to figure out how on earth they were going to dispose of the pile of corpses, he made a surprising comment. He casually mentioned that these were all fresh, delicious sashimi, hinting that this would be their food source as time passed. When she looked at him in disbelief, he explained that food supplies would become scarce after a year, and these mutants would be one of the few edible resources left. He explained that in the apocalypse, food would come from 3 primary sources: unexpired food, food obtained from the wheel, and the corpses of the swarm. The idea of eating mutants made her eyes widen in horror, but he, ever pragmatic, pointed out that eating these creatures was still far better than resorting to cannibalism, a thought that left her even more shaken. Helplessly, she equipped herself with what she could find and began the grim task of hacking off the broken limbs. In no time, she had chunks of meat, both large and small, piled into a basin. He, noticing her quick adaptation, praised her for getting used to such gruesome work so swiftly. But before long, he approached her with his backpack slung over his shoulder, saying he needed to go out and gather more undead crystals. He reassured her to trust that he would return. With her gaze fixed on him as he departed, he once again ventured into danger, fully aware that he would have to push even further from their temporary refuge. As he navigated the desolate streets, his senses remained sharp, listening for any hint of activity. Yet, all he encountered were the grim remains of the undead and fallen humans, their bodies scattered across the road like discarded remnants of a forgotten world. As he approached an intersection, the air was suddenly pierced by cries for help, forcing him to stop abruptly. Startled, he cursed under his breath, wondering what kind of fool would shout so recklessly in a situation like this. It was as if they deliberately invited every undead in the vicinity to descend upon them. At the intersection, his eyes locked onto a girl sitting on the ground, her desperate pleas echoing through the deserted streets. Without a moment's hesitation, he rushed over and clamped his hand over her mouth, whispering urgently for her to be silent before she attracted more of the undead. But it was already too late. The echoes of her cries had drawn a horde of undead, now squeezing through the narrow alleyways and charging straight toward them. Realizing the imminent danger, he quickly unsheathed his blade and slashed at the advancing undead with deadly precision. Despite his efforts, their numbers were overwhelming. Desperate to buy time, he ordered her to run while he held them off. In her panic, she noticed an open door nearby. Without thinking twice, she bolted inside and called out, urging him to hurry and take cover before it was too late. Ignoring the undead closing behind him, he made a frantic dash for the door. Just as he slipped inside, they slammed the door shut behind him. But before they could catch their breath, a decaying hand suddenly shot through the gap, causing them to nearly jump out of their skin. The terror of the moment was reflected in their pale faces as the door, now unable to fully close. With no time to lose, they bolted up the stairs. But it quickly became apparent that her strength was failing. Her breath came in ragged gasps, and her pace slowed significantly as exhaustion set in. Just as she stumbled, one of the undead managed to grab her leg, dragging her down the stairs with a vice-like grip. Without hesitation, he reacted, swinging his large blade down in a mighty arc, severing the undead's grasp on her with a single, precise strike. He pulled her back to her feet, but the situation had worsened. The staircase was now swarming with undead, closing in on them from all directions. Then, as the chaos threatened to overwhelm them, a sudden blinding light burst through the narrow window, casting an eerie, otherworldly glow over the scene. He turned toward the light, his heart pounding in his chest. His eyes widened in shock as he recognized the source, a glowing white object descending from the sky, illuminating the dark stairwell like a beacon. The realization hit him with startling clarity. It was the dungeon key, an object of immense power, and it was now within their reach. In his past life, he had learned that the dungeon key was one of the rarest and most valuable items in the apocalypse. It was the only way to reach the dungeon mystery land, a place brimming with hope and wonder. Even top veterans had wanted it, though none had ever managed to get their hands on it. He was determined. The key of mysteries had to be his. As he was lost in thought, she behind him suddenly shouted, "Watch out for the undead!" He whirled around and saw a vicious undead charging straight at him, aiming for his groin. Fear gripped him and he broke into a cold sweat. In a panic, he slammed his fist into the undead's face, shielding himself and cursing the creature. When the undead charged at him, aiming for his groin, he thought, "Great, even zombies know where it hurts the most." Now fueled by anger, he decided to deal with the 10 undead once and for all. The hallway was narrow, perfect for a defensive stance and a counterattack. Just as he was about to strike, a gray hand reached out from the shadows. Staying calm, he swung his blade with precision. The hand flew off, green liquid splattering across the floor in a gruesome spray. In a flashback, we see her life just a few days ago. She had everything: pursuers, fame, material wealth, and knowledge, truly the darling of heaven. But in a matter of days, everything had unraveled. Her relatives, friends, and even her father had turned into man-eating mutants. She was left kneeling helplessly. As she faced what seemed like her final moments, she saw the undead lying defeated on the ground. Overwhelmed with joy, she couldn't believe he had managed to eliminate all the threats before her eyes. Her relief was interrupted by Zhang's scolding. If she wanted to stay alive, she couldn't afford to dawdle. They had to find the key, and they needed to act quickly. The downstairs area was swarming with undead, making it clear that going down was not an option. Their only chance was to reach the rooftop and find another way out. He had a plan. The rooftop of their building connected to the building in front, and he planned to exit the building from there. If they could make it there, they'd be closer to their goal. He figured that once he descended from that building, the key would be just 2 streets away. As he surveyed the area, he noticed vines creeping over every surface, their relentless growth overtaking the landscape. Suddenly, a branch snapped toward the young girl, wrapping its tendrils around her and lifting her off the ground with surprising force. Without missing a beat, he sprang into action, intercepting the movement and catching her in mid-air. His response was swift and calculated, driven by instinct rather than emotion. He set her down without a word, his focus immediately shifting back to the task at hand. She glanced at him, impressed by his quick thinking, but he remained unfazed, his mind occupied with the challenges ahead. Irritation simmered as he faced the mutated plants that slowed their progress. Every second spent dealing with the overgrown foliage felt like a waste of time. He hacked through the vines with growing impatience, determined to push forward. At last, they reached a locked door. She asked what they should do next. His answer was direct and decisive, a powerful kick that sent the door crashing open. They quickly made their way to the rooftop, where they were met with the unexpected sight of a large group of survivors already gathered, waiting for whatever came next. A blond guy wielding a baseball bat approached them with a stern expression, demanding to know what they were doing. He warned that breaking the door could attract more of the undead. Zhang quickly stepped forward, clarifying that they meant no harm and had already cleared out all the zombies in their building. The blonde's eyes widened in surprise, clearly taken aback by the claim. It seemed unbelievable that anyone could have cleared out all the zombies in such a place, especially with the constant threat of more potentially making their way up to the roof. Despite his skepticism, they used a shovel to prop up the broken door, hoping it would at least delay any potential threats. The blonde turned back to him, accusing him of putting everyone in danger regardless. Before tensions could escalate, his friends intervened, pointing out that he and the girl hadn't even known there were others in the building. The blonde's anger subsided slightly, but his distrust remained evident in his gaze. As the situation calmed, he took a moment to scan the surroundings from the rooftop, his eyes searching the horizon. The blonde, still wary, asked him about his intentions. He revealed that his goal was to reach the middle school. The blonde raised an eyebrow in surprise, questioning how he planned to navigate the streets, likely crawling with zombies. He explained that he had seen some lights in that area and was determined to investigate them. The blonde's expression shifted from skepticism to reluctant admiration. Impressed by his courage, he confirmed that the lights were indeed at the school. He then pointed out a possible shortcut, another building close to the east side of the rooftop. If he was willing to take the risk, he could try jumping across to reach it. However, the blonde warned that it was a dangerous move, one that could seriously injure anyone who attempted it. He looked at the gap between the buildings, weighing his options. The jump was risky, but it was also the fastest route to his destination. Determined, he made up his mind. The blonde watched him closely, as if trying to gauge whether this stranger would actually go through with it. He immediately headed east, intent on assessing the situation for himself. The gap between the buildings was about 5 meters, with the opposite rooftop sitting 1 level lower, a distance he judged to be challenging but manageable. For him, it was nothing more than a test of his daily training, something he felt confident in handling. He made up his mind to take the leap. Just as he was about to move, the girl tugged at his clothes, her eyes wide with fear as she pleaded with him not to leave her behind. A brief pang of compassion crossed his mind, and he agreed to take her backpack with him across the gap. The blonde, watching this unfold, scoffed and warned that he was asking for trouble by trying to take both. Zhang, thinking quickly, suggested using ropes to secure the backpack and his body to hers, ensuring they could cross together safely. The blonde let out a harsh laugh, dismissing the idea. He pointed out that there was no way she could make the jump while burdened with both a heavy backpack and another person. Instead, he offered a different solution. The girl should pass the backpack to him, and he would throw it over once they were safely on the other side. But Zhang wasn't convinced. He knew that handing over the backpack could mean losing it forever, especially to someone as untrustworthy as the blonde. When he declined the offer, the blonde's demeanor shifted from dismissive to hostile. His eyes narrowed, and he threatened to break his arm if he didn't comply. Zhang could have replied with a cold smile, "You'll have to catch me first. Good luck with that." Without another word, he backed up, took a running start, and leaped from the 200-meter-high building. Time seemed to slow as he sailed through the air, the wind rushing past him. He landed on the opposite roof with a heavy thud, his bare arm and knee absorbing the impact, leaving scratches and bruises in their wake. The blonde stood on the other side, stunned into silence, unable to believe what he had just witnessed. Wasting no time, he quickly secured the ropes and prepared to help the girl across. But as he worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. His instincts proved correct. A hulking stranger, hidden in the shadows and observing them through binoculars, had been tracking their every move. This stranger, a member of a notorious outlaw community, saw the chaos unfolding below as an opportunity. These outlaws thrived on preying upon the vulnerable, exploiting lost and helpless women for their own twisted purposes. The predatory gleam in his eyes made it clear that he had set his sights on them, and he wasn't about to let this opportunity slip away. Inside the grimy, makeshift establishment, women were being forcibly abused, and in private rooms, people placed bets on the brutality of the assailants. One guy turned to his friend and asked how much longer he thought the abuser would last. The friend, placing a bet for a cigarette, guessed 1 more minute. The white-haired guy scoffed, saying that this rundown place didn't even have a box of wine. He'd only found the cigarette from the body of an old man. His friend countered that if the place wasn't a school canteen, where would he find wine? To get wine, he'd need to head to the principal's office. A bald guy chimed in, noting that the principal's office was locked by some fool of a student. So what could they do? One of the men suggested they wait for the 5th brother, Lao Wu, and proposed throwing all the girls to the zombies. The white-haired guy objected, arguing that they shouldn't throw them away. This angered the bald guy, who seemed to think they'd gone beyond the point of no return. As they conversed, the giant who had been closely watching the girl with Zhang walked in. The room erupted in chants of 5th brother in his honor. One of the men informed him that the building they were occupying was now surrounded by a massive horde of zombies, effectively trapping them inside. One guy grumbled about how one night had dramatically shifted the world's balance. Lao Wu laughed, dismissing the concern. He told them to do whatever they pleased, asserting that in this world, only the strongest reigned supreme. Even the apocalypse, he claimed, only made their rule more divine. The scene shifts to Zhang risking his life as he weaves through the perilous streets in search of the dungeon key. His movements are swift and calculated, effortlessly darting past lurking monsters. However, the girl struggles to keep up, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. Fear and exhaustion weigh heavily on her, and she finally begs him to slow down, terrified that he might leave her behind. Irritated, he begrudgingly slows his pace, but not without grumbling under his breath. He mutters about how she's become a burden, feeling tricked into helping her simply because she appeared helpless. His frustration is palpable, yet despite his annoyance, she manages to keep up, pushing herself to match his pace. After what feels like an eternity, they finally reach the school. The silence that greets them is eerie, with not a single sound to indicate the presence of the undead. The air is thick with tension, and he can't help but wonder where the zombies have gone. He guesses that the quiet is due to the undead being gathered elsewhere by sheer chance. He's right. Inside the school, multiple students have barricaded themselves in classrooms, desperately trying to escape the undead that had overrun the area. Their faces are marked by despair, knowing that even if the zombies don't breach their makeshift defenses, hunger and isolation will eventually take their toll. As they cautiously move through the hallways, a girl trapped inside one of the classrooms spots them. Her eyes widen with a mix of hope and desperation, and she begins calling out for help, her voice trembling with fear. The girl at his side instinctively moves to respond, but he immediately stops her, his hand shooting out to silence her. "Don't," he admonishes, his voice low and stern. He reminds her that making noise could attract the undead lurking nearby, potentially leading them straight to their location. He points out, with a bluntness that stings, that she wouldn't be able to defend herself if they were swarmed. His words are harsh, but they're rooted in the grim reality of their situation. She hesitates, a pang of sadness washing over her as she looks at the trapped students. The sight of their helplessness and fear tugs at her heart, filling her with distress. She wants to help them, to do something, anything, to ease their suffering. But he, ever the realist, quickly quashes her thoughts of heroism. He explains that they have no idea how many zombies are outside those classrooms, and that he's not equipped to take on such a large number. His tone is firm as he tells her that this is the apocalypse, and if she truly wants to save those students, she'll have to find a way to do it on her own. The gravity of his words sinks in, and she nods, a quiet apology slipping from her lips. As she followed him through the dark, dilapidated corridors of the school, a flurry of questions raced through her mind. Why had he chosen this school as his destination? Was there any hidden sanctuary where they could evade the relentless zombies? The eerie silence of the school, punctuated only by their footsteps, heightened her anxiety. Trying to break the tension, she gathered the courage to thank him for saving her earlier and asked for his name. He stopped abruptly and turned to face her with a skeptical look. He asked her if she really thought a single word from her could repay the risk he had taken, his tone dripping with sarcasm. She was momentarily stunned, unsure of how to respond. His bluntness caught her off guard. In frustration, she asked what he actually wanted. With a smirk, he told her that he had saved her to use her as bait. He added, almost casually, that in a tight spot, a pack of instant noodles would be more useful than she was. His remark left her speechless and taken aback by his cold indifference. Swallowing her pride, she introduced herself as Liang Chu Yin. In return, he shared his name. Despite his harsh demeanor, she decided to stick with him, convincing herself that deep down, he was a decent person, even if his mood was perpetually sour. As they continued their search for the dungeon key, the distant cries for help from a corner classroom reached their ears. He hypothesized that the survivors inside might have seen the key or at least had valuable information about its location. He instructed Liang to stay hidden and, with agility, climbed up a pillar to reach the classroom. The noise from his movement attracted the undead inside the school. As a monstrous creature lunged at him, he reacted swiftly. He delivered a powerful kick to one's head, sending it crashing into a nearby wall. Landing with precision, he drew his blade and, in a series of swift, calculated strikes, dispatched the approaching undead. Inside the classroom, 3 survivors huddled together, their fear palpable. Among them was Teacher Pooh, who stepped forward with a mixture of relief and gratitude. He scanned the room, assessing the survivors, and wondering if they had seen where the key might have fallen. Teacher Pooh introduced himself and explained that they were trapped with 2 students and a girl named Chiang who had sadly perished. Pooh asked if they had seen a ray of light, emphasizing that any detail could be crucial. He promised that if they helped him locate the key, he would ensure their safety. The 2 students shook their heads, indicating they hadn't witnessed the light. However, Pooh spoke up with certainty, saying she had indeed seen it, and even knew where it had landed. His curiosity piqued, he immediately pressed for the exact location of the light. Pooh, however, insisted that he first rescue them before revealing the key's location. Doubts clouded his judgment, and he hesitated, questioning whether he would really assist them once he knew where the key was. Pooh described the key's descent in vivid detail, hoping it would be enough to secure their rescue. Despite the detailed description, he assessed that the situation was dire. There were too many undead outside to guarantee the safety of all 3 survivors. With his current capabilities, he could only take 2 people with him. The children, outraged by his decision, demanded an explanation for his apparent disregard for their companion's life. They argued vehemently, finding his choice unfair and unreasonable. He sneered at their frustration, dismissing their pleas with a grim reminder. There's no fairness in the apocalypse. Only the strong survive while the weak are left to perish. With a hardened resolve, he instructed them to remain where they were if they chose to wait for death. Drawing his sword and bracing for any potential attacks, he made his decision. He would take the 2 who were willing to follow him, leaving the rest to their uncertain fate. The students were gripped by fear, but Pooh gently caressed their shoulders, trying to offer them a shred of comfort. He, standing at a distance, ordered them to decide who among them would leave with him. Understanding that only 2 could be saved out of the 3, Pooh didn't hesitate. Without a second thought, she selflessly offered the students the chance. Observing this, he assured her that he would safely escort the 2 children out. However, when he pressed for the key's exact location, Pooh, to his surprise, insisted that he wait until after the students were secure. She promised to write down the location and toss it down to him only once they were safe. It was clear that Pooh had meticulously planned this, and her every move was calculated to ensure the children's survival. With a cold tone, he remarked that he hoped she wouldn't regret her self-sacrificing choice, and then ordered the students to follow him. He could feel the presence of 3 zombies lurking just behind the door. He quickly instructed Pooh to lock the door as soon as they exited. As he opened the door, one of the zombies tried to slip through, but he was faster, delivering a swift kick that sent the creature crashing into the wall. In one fluid motion, he decapitated it with a precise slice. Pooh, though outwardly stern, was just as terrified as the others. Yet, she stayed firm, fully aware of her duty to protect her students. Grabbing the 2 girls, he led them swiftly down the stairs, but something felt amiss. The entire corridor was eerily silent. Not a single undead could be seen. A looming, monstrous presence seemed to hang in the air, and he quickly warned them to slow down. The students, their anxiety mounting, asked if he had sensed something wrong, as the path ahead appeared clear. Ignoring whether his instincts might be off, he pressed on, racing down the stairs. Suddenly, a massive shadowy serpent lunged at them in a surprise attack. He, reacting in an instant, drew his machete and swung above, only for the serpent to vanish before his blade could connect. The girls, bewildered, asked why they had stopped again. More convinced now of a lurking danger, he hushed them, but after a thorough search, he found nothing, leaving him to question whether his senses were playing tricks on him. The shadow serpent crept closer and closer to the girls, inch by inch, while they remained oblivious to the looming danger. He, trailing behind, was lost in thought, the strange aura around him gnawing at his instincts. The serpent flicked its tongue, teasing Xiao's hair and sending a chill down her spine. When she turned to look, her blood ran cold. She was face to face with the serpent's gaping mouth, filled with sharp, jagged teeth ready to crush her. Panic-stricken, she nearly lost control of herself. In that split second, he hurled his machete at the serpent's mouth. With a sharp swoosh, a piece of the serpent's lip fell to the ground. The building echoed with its agonizing shriek, a sound that pierced through the gut and heart. Enraged, the serpent lashed out with its claw at him. But instead of retreating, he stood his ground, meeting the attack head-on with his fist. To his shock, the punch didn't even faze the beast. He quickly realized that the serpent had metal-clad arms, making it a nearly indestructible foe. Its relentless attacks, barely dodged by him, proved it was far harder to defeat than he had anticipated. Seeing the serpent's relentless strength, he launched a perfect roundhouse kick, aiming for its head with all his might. But the attack seemed to have no effect. Instead, the serpent's insane strength allowed it to seize him by the leg. With a brutal force, it slammed him into the ground so hard that the floor cracked beneath him. The girl watched in horror, her heart gripped with fear. If he couldn't defeat this monster, none of them had a chance to escape. Desperately, she called out to her companion, Lee, for help, but to her dismay she fled, abandoning her in panic. Now he appeared heavily injured and barely able to move. The serpent raised its powerful arms high, preparing to crush him with all its might. Was this how his tragic life would end? Just as the serpent was about to deliver the fatal blow, a sudden bang echoed through the hallway. The serpent was sent flying northwest by a gunshot. He had managed to draw a gun just in time. He felt a surge of relief, but his condition was far from stable. The earlier impact had dislocated his right arm. Gritting his teeth, he urged the girl to get up quickly if they wanted any chance of survival. But before they could move, the sound of metallic thuds echoed from the stairwell. Tong, 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 as footsteps gradually drew closer. The girl's heart leaped into her throat, her fear spiking. Only then did he fully realize the gravity of their situation. Could the gunshot have attracted nearby undead? Seeing the impending danger, he immediately shielded the two girls behind him. But within seconds, Liang, having come up from downstairs, hurled herself into his arms, breathless and terrified. She stammered that she had waited for him so long she was scared to death. Relieved to see she wasn't one of the undead, the two girls exhaled deeply. Through her fear, Liang explained that after a prolonged search, she had finally found him. Earlier, at the multimedia center, a sudden flash of light had erupted, causing a horde of undead to surge in from all directions. Trapped in the chaos, she had been overwhelmed with fear and, with no other option, had fled in desperation, racing upstairs to find him. As he absorbed her account, the pieces fell into place. The source of light that attracted the undead was clear now. It was the light from the wheel. As the old saying goes, sometimes you search fruitlessly, only to find what you need by chance. He quickly gathered everyone and led them downstairs. On the way down, Li expressed her regret to Xiao for not being able to help her, and she accepted it with understanding, acknowledging it wasn't intentional. They soon exited the classroom building without incident. Seeing that all the students were safe, Pooh hesitated for a moment, considering whether she should have kept the key's location secret, trusting that he would eventually come to rescue her. But she quickly dismissed the thought, realizing he still had the kids to worry about. She tossed down the paper with the location written on it. Liang asked him why he hadn't helped Pooh. He explained that the teacher had mistrusted him, so he decided to teach her a lesson. As he unfolded the paper and read it, he discovered that the key had landed at a construction site, an out-of-the-way spot that most people would overlook. Realizing the importance of finding the wheel that Liang mentioned, he concluded that the wheel was his top priority. Distrusting the students' reliability, he decided to look for the wheel first rather than search for the dungeon key with them. He informed everyone that they were heading to the multimedia center despite her warning that it was overrun with zombies. He brushed off the danger, confident that the greater the risk, the greater the reward. With determination, he instructed the students to follow him. When they arrived at the multimedia center, it quickly became apparent that it was teeming with undead. Lee, alarmed, questioned whether he had deliberately led them into such a dangerous situation. It seemed to her that, after getting the information he needed, he considered them expendable and intended to use them as bait for the undead. He, hearing their concerns, responded firmly. He explained that the apocalypse was filled with undead no matter where one went. He assured them that he wasn't so despicable as to use them as mere bait. He made it clear that they had to wait outside until he cleared out the center and returned. After giving his instructions, he ventured alone into the multimedia center. Liang wondered why he was so determined to go inside. Was there something crucial he needed? Lee, meanwhile, was concerned that he was making a grave mistake. Despite having a gun, she doubted his ability to take on all the zombies alone. While they took refuge in a hallway, Lee decided they should leave for a safer location. She grabbed Xiao's hand and urged her to come with her, insisting that they couldn't wait around and risk being killed by the zombies. She frightened Xiao by suggesting that Zhang might not survive the overwhelming number of undead and that they needed to avoid the same fate. Xiao, who was soft-hearted, hesitated, worried about leaving him after all he had done for them. Liang, sensing something off, asked what they were planning. Li fibbed, claiming she had a stomachache and that Xiao was just accompanying her to the washroom. Although she found this explanation suspicious, her primary concern was for Zhang's safety. As he stepped inside, he saw a group of pitch-black undead. The situation was grim, but he noted with relief that there were no mutated monsters among them, unlike before. He prepared for yet another intense battle, knowing there was no room for hesitation. His right arm hung uselessly at his side, dislocated from a previous encounter. Without wasting any time, he grabbed his arm and, biting down on his machete to keep from making noise, forcefully reset it with a sharp crack. The pain shot through him, but he didn't dwell on it. He had been through this process many times in his past life and knew better than to let it slow him down. The noise, however, caught the attention of the nearby zombies, who began closing in. He didn't hesitate. He quickly drew his pistol and started firing, each shot precise and controlled. The zombies fell one by one, their bodies piling up on the floor as he methodically cleared the room. The sound of gunfire echoed through the building, alerting those outside to the danger within. Li, assessing the situation, immediately formulated a plan. She decided to take shelter in the teacher's dormitory and urged Xiao to come with her, knowing they needed to act fast. However, Xiao broke away from her grip and ran toward Liang, pleading with her to join them instead. Li, frustrated by her actions, muttered that bringing her along was a mistake, thinking more people would only mean less food to go around. Liang, however, refused to abandon him. She questioned how long they thought they could survive without him. He was a powerful ally, and leaving him behind would be a death sentence for them. She tried to change Liang's mind, pointing out the risks, but Liang countered with cold logic. If Zhang couldn't handle himself inside the center, they had no chance of surviving outside. She was left without a response, silenced by her reasoning. Inside the building, the battle continued. Zhang moved with precision, cutting down the undead with ruthless efficiency. The floor was littered with the corpses of the zombies he had defeated, a stark reminder of the relentless fight he had just endured. Then something caught his eye amidst the chaos. Standing before him was a color wheel, distinct and unexpected. He approached cautiously, realizing as he got closer that this wasn't just any ordinary wheel. It was an extra-rare tricolor wheel, far more valuable than anything he had anticipated finding. He paused, his mind racing as he assessed the situation. He knew its value and what it could mean for his future efforts. The exhaustion from the battle faded into the background as he prepared to claim this rare find. Understanding the significance of what lay before him, in the apocalypse, wheels wield incredible power, with the potential to save lives. While ordinary wheels range from grade 1 to 9, there are also special multicolored wheels. The tricolor wheel, the 7-color wheel, and the 9-color wheel. Ordinary wheels offer equipment and food, but multicolored wheels provide extraordinary benefits. They grant formidable battle skills such as warrior, assassin, and ranger abilities, as well as incredible support skills like doctor, alchemy, and even chef. Attaining a professional skill from a wheel unlocks its greatest resources. For instance, an assassin with a wild battle sword could achieve movie-like precision and prowess. However, compared to a single-color wheel, multicolored wheels are incredibly rare. There's also a risk. If the wheel lands on a black area, it could explode like a bomb. As he focused on the wheel, he noticed a badge within the black area, indicating it was a professional section, and therefore, safe from explosion. Despite his string of rotten luck, he had unexpectedly found a tricolor wheel. Could it be that Shin's luck had somehow transferred to him? In the hallway, Xiao desperately tried to persuade Liang to flee from the center, but she steadfastly refused. Instead, she warned them about the danger of making noise and attracting more zombies. Li, however, was confident that the zombies wouldn't pose a threat since they were all drawn to Zhang inside the center. She forcefully dragged Xiao away, sarcastically suggesting they should wait for his corpse, their supposed savior. Liang, enraged by this remark, slapped Li across the face, demanding she remember who had saved her life. Li, stung by the humiliation, retaliated with a slap of her own, warning Liang not to think he would always be there to protect them. As the tension escalated, Xiao tried to lead her away from the area, unaware of the looming dangers of the apocalypse. Meanwhile, in the darkness, a pair of watchful eyes focused intently on Liang, who remained blissfully unaware of the impending danger. Fifth brother, enjoying their recent fight, gave orders to his men to capture her immediately. Despite their concerns about plunging into a horde of zombies, their leader was confident that all the zombies had been lured into the center, making it relatively safe elsewhere. On the other side, Li, fuming with anger, searched for a good hiding spot. Xiao, bewildered and questioning their decision to go off alone, tried to keep her voice low, knowing that Li had already been slapped for her concerns. As they descended the stairs, they arrived at a location where they could clearly detect someone's presence due to subtle movements. Meanwhile, Liang was consumed by anger at the ungrateful girls. As she wandered aimlessly, she heard their distant screams. At that moment, a dark shadow began to close in on her. Before she could react, a man seized her from behind, restraining her tightly. Liang cried out loudly in panic, but her pleas went unheard. Suddenly, a crude man appeared from around the corner, leering as he remarked on Liang's beauty. He ordered his men to take her to Lao Wu for their amusement. She warned them that Zhang would not take kindly to this, but they dismissed her, confident that he was likely dead and that no one would come to her rescue. Back inside the multimedia center, he wished for a cheat code to automatically gather all the crystals, because in an apocalypse, the only thing worse than zombies is manual labor. Unaware of the chaos outside, he wished for a cheat code like in a game that could automatically gather all the crystals for him. Li and Xiao sprinted through the desolate streets, a savage zombie closing in on them with terrifying speed. Their breath came in ragged gasps as they cried out for help, but Li quickly silenced Xiao, warning her that shouting would only draw more of the undead to their location. In her desperation, Li stumbled, her legs giving way beneath her. Xiao, noticing her friend's struggle, stopped in her tracks and extended a hand to help her up. The zombie was nearly upon them, its growls growing louder. But Li, driven by an overwhelming instinct to survive, made a split-second decision. With a forceful shove, she pushed Xiao directly into the path of the approaching zombie, using her as bait to buy herself time to escape. Xiao's eyes widened in shock and disbelief as she was thrown to the ground, left to the mercy of the undead. The zombie pounced on her with feral aggression, and within moments, her screams were silenced, replaced by the grisly sounds of her demise. Li, drenched in sweat and shaking from the near miss, forced herself to keep moving. She retraced her steps back to the spot where Zhang had instructed them to wait, only to be confronted by a horrifying sight. Liang was being dragged away by a group of kidnappers, her struggles futile against their overwhelming strength. Fear gripped Li as she watched the scene unfold, knowing that if she stayed, she could easily share the same fate. Without a second thought, Li began to back away, hoping to escape unnoticed. But one of the kidnappers caught sight of her and immediately gave chase. Panic surged through her as she fled once more, her lungs burning with every breath. Meanwhile, Liang, refusing to give in without a fight, managed to sink her teeth into the hand of one of her captors. He cursed in pain, loosening his grip just enough for her to break free. She stumbled and fell, but before the kidnapper could recapture her, a sharp blade suddenly pierced his hand. The kidnapper howled in agony, releasing her as he clutched his wounded hand. She, seizing the opportunity, scrambled to her feet and rushed towards Zhang, who had just arrived in the nick of time. She threw herself into his arms, relief washing over her as she realized he had come to save her. The building echoed with the kidnapper's gut-wrenching scream as he pulled the blade from his hand, his face contorted in fury. He spat out a threat, vowing that his boss and the notorious fifth brother would never let this insult go unpunished. But before he could finish his sentence, Zhang delivered a crushing punch to his chest, followed by a brutal kick to his face that sent him crumpling to the ground. With the kidnappers incapacitated, he turned to Liang, his expression serious. He asked where the other girls were, and she explained that Li and Xiao had doubted he would make it out alive, so they had decided to head in a different direction. As they spoke, Li staggered into view, breathless and disheveled. She quickly fabricated a story, claiming that Xiao had fallen behind and was overtaken by zombies. Her voice trembled as she apologized, promising to be more cautious in the future. Liang asked him what he was going to plan to do with the kidnappers. He told Liang that she needn't worry. The zombies would take care of them. There was no point in wasting any more energy on scum like them. With the multimedia center now secured and the undead threat eliminated, Li finally understood the full extent of his strength. She realized that staying close to him was her best shot at survival in this unforgiving world. He, sensing her newfound resolve, instructed them both to remain at the media center while he went back to retrieve someone important. As he disappeared into the shadows once more, the gravity of their situation sank in. They were now bound to his fate, their survival intertwined with his, as they navigated the perils of a world overrun by the dead and ruled by the ruthless. Teacher Pooh heard knocking on the door and, in her despair, grabbed a shard of broken glass, ready to end her life. In the chaos of the apocalypse, where the undead roamed freely, she feared the worst and believed that death was imminent. She resolved to end her life on her own terms, feeling that her mission to help her students had been fulfilled. Just as she was about to act, Zhang kicked the door open with a forceful bang, interrupting her desperate decision. His timely arrival prevented her from making a tragic mistake. Teacher Pooh threw herself into his arms, tears flowing as she sobbed that she genuinely believed she was going to die. She thanked him for not abandoning her. Feeling satisfied after dealing with the kidnappers, Zhang tried to maintain his composure, struggling to hide his blush. He explained that his actions had been a lesson in trust, and now he was taking her to safety. On the other hand, Liang and Li were busy collecting crystals, as he had instructed. Li complained about the task, finding it repulsive. When he returned with Pooh, she quickly approached her student, embracing her and anxiously asking about Xiao. Upon learning that Xiao had been killed by the undead, Pooh blamed herself, unaware that Li had actually pushed Xiao into the path of danger. Seeing Pooh's distress, Li feigned sympathy, claiming that Xiao's death could have been avoided if Zhang had agreed to save everyone at once. She implied that they were indirectly responsible for Xiao's demise. Hearing Li's accusations, Liang erupted, shouting that if she hadn't ignored the advice and insisted on bringing Xiao along, the girl might not have been killed by the undead. Li, however, retorted that both Liang and Zhang had used people as bait for the undead, playing the role of saviors while putting others at risk. Before Li could say more, he slapped her face and told her to think before speaking in the future. He clarified that if he could save her, he could just as quickly leave her to the undead. He hoped the slap would make her realize that, in this apocalypse, taking on more people meant more danger, and he was under no obligation to save her. Saving her was an act of benevolence. Not saving her was his right. Seeing the tension escalate, Pooh quickly intervened, trying to calm things down. She explained that children often speak without thinking and urged everyone not to take it personally. She also expressed her gratitude to him for saving her life. Liang asked him why they had been tasked with collecting all the crystals. Without answering immediately, he led the group to where the tricolor wheel had appeared. Liang was surprised to discover this was where the crystals were meant to be used. He then explained that, unlike the rank wheel, the tricolor wheel didn't simply count the number of crystals. Instead, it measured their energy to meet a specific activation threshold. He inserted 26 rank 1 crystals into the energy plate, and the wheel began to spin rapidly. A wave of relief washed over him, knowing the effort to gather the crystals hadn't been wasted. The wheel eventually stopped on the red square, and a box emerged. He opened it with eager anticipation, expecting an influential combat profession. However, his excitement quickly turned to shock when he saw the profession he had been awarded. Glory Artisan. Realizing this role wouldn't make him exceptional, he was disappointed. From the colored wheels, one can receive both a primary profession and a support profession. Support professions are secondary and do not enhance combat abilities. Artisan is classified as a support-type profession. Professions are ranked into 4 tiers: trainee, novice, intermediate, and advanced. He hadn't expected that the crystals he had painstakingly gathered would result in such a seemingly useless profession. This outcome only reinforced his belief that his luck was entirely cursed. Li asked to see the reward he received, feeling that all her hard work collecting crystals shouldn't be used by him alone. He handed the paper to Pooh and began examining the other items the wheel had produced, including a 4-colored badge that seemed unusual to him. She read the page, discovering that the wheel could grant various ranks and specialties. The artisan profession included 5 techniques: enchantment, magic, collection, mosaic, and crafting. The mention of 5 types of techniques piqued his interest, prompting him to quickly reclaim the page and read through the details. He realized that this artisan profession wasn't as useless as he thought. The skills could produce and upgrade weapons and greatly enhance their capabilities. Each color of metal represented a different ability. With these new skills, his weaponry would see a significant boost in power. Seeing the potential, he noted that there were still plenty of crystals left from the undead. He called everyone to help gather them, intending to eliminate a few more zombies in the area. By doing so, they could be in a stronger position. He emphasized the need to spend more time acquiring skills for better self-defense. As they worked to clear the corpses, Lao Wu watched from a distance. He was impressed by his strength, having single-handedly cleared the entire media center of zombies. However, he was puzzled by their actions, mainly why they were meticulously sorting through the bodies. When he noticed one of the zombie heads missing a crystal, he quickly pieced together their plan. Sensing the shift in his boss's focus, Bian, his assistant, asked what he had discovered. Fifth Brother ordered him to assemble everyone immediately, as they had an urgent task ahead. After clearing the piles of corpses, Liang felt a gnawing hunger since she hadn't eaten in a day. He handed her a food packet and advised her to drink water from the school bathroom, noting that the water tank still worked. He gave her a backpack containing 3 days' worth of food and some emergency medicine, instructing her to take good care of it as it held life-saving supplies. He told her to stay in the media center, which was relatively safe, while he went outside to handle some tasks. With a hint of sadness, Liang asked if he was planning to go off alone again. He replied that he needed to retrieve the key to the mysteries first. He reminded them to continue gathering crystals and assured them he would return soon. Li, concerned, questioned what they should do if zombies attacked while he was away. He bluntly stated that it was not his responsibility to protect them. He then picked up an ordinary wooden stick and demonstrated his crafting skills. In seconds, the stick transformed into a long wooden spear. He distributed the spears to them for self-defense, warning them that without proper protection, only death would await them. Pooh understood the harsh reality and acknowledged that they needed to learn to fend for themselves in this ruthless apocalyptic world. With the spears handed out, he left to continue his work. He headed alone to the construction site of the nearby school's new building. A black shadow suddenly fell from the sky as he entered the site to assess the situation. Instinctively, he caught the falling figure, realizing it wasn't an object, but a girl in a military uniform. When their eyes met, she sprang out of his arms and quickly grabbed his uniform. He, taken aback, shouted that she must be out of her mind for treating her savior like this. Despite his protest, she maintained a stern demeanor, interrogating him with sharp questions about his identity and reasons for being there. Seeing that reason wasn't working, he quickly used force to free himself from her grip, then restrained her by choking her neck. He demanded answers to the same questions she had posed. She, realizing being attacked by someone with high combat skills, warned him that he was assaulting an officer. Recognizing this, he eased his grip. She admired his quick reflexes and asked if he was trained in martial arts. He admitted he had practiced fighting for 10 years, though he started as a novice. A bullet zipped past them, narrowly missing its mark. He reacted instantly, pulling the girl with him as he ducked behind a nearby wall for cover. She quickly explained that the people chasing her were death row inmates who had escaped in the chaos of the apocalypse. His tension eased slightly as he recalled how, in the previous apocalypse, these criminals had run rampant. With a grim smile, he decided it was time to be less restrained. However, he noted a significant problem. The criminals were armed to the teeth, having completely raided a weapons depot. They were well aware of their firepower advantage and had already begun to display their unhinged nature. Among the group of criminals, their leader, Lao Qian, barked orders at his subordinate, Da Li, to force the girl out of hiding. Da Li hesitated for a moment, asking about the man with her, to which Qian coldly replied that he was to be killed on sight. With that, Da Li eagerly charged toward them, intent on delivering a fatal headshot. But as he approached, a single bullet pierced the center of his forehead, dropping him instantly. He hadn't taken down criminals in a while, but his aim was still deadly accurate. The sudden death of Da Li sent the gang into a frenzy. They unleashed a wild barrage of bullets at his previous position, trying to suppress any threat. However, they were caught off guard when he suddenly appeared above them, his position elevated. Before they could react, he took aim and fired a shot straight into Lao Qian's chest, killing him instantly. Panic erupted among Qian's remaining associates. As they scrambled to aim at him, the policewoman with him sprang into action. With lightning speed, she delivered a powerful knee strike to one of the criminals, following up with a precise punch that sent him flying. The criminal, now on the ground and begging for mercy, looked up at her with fear. But before she could decide his fate, Zhang had already pulled the trigger, ending his life with a cold, unhesitating shot. The policewoman rounded on him, scolding him for killing a criminal who had already surrendered. She questioned his actions, asking why he had pulled the trigger when the man was no longer a threat. He didn't offer an answer, his expression remaining hard and unreadable as he holstered his weapon. After ensuring the criminal was dead, she questioned him again about his actions. He explained that he was doing what police officers should have done, eliminating dangerous criminals. He murmured that in the apocalypse, there were countless cases where people begged for help not just from the undead, but from scum-like death row criminals who preyed on them. He recounted how, in his past life, his ex-girlfriend was brutally raped and killed by such criminals. He emphasized that since these criminals were already sentenced to death, he would show them no mercy. She looked at him, noting his cold demeanor. While she understood his reasoning, she was struck by how young he was, yet so mercilessly cold-blooded. She wondered what experience had hardened him so profoundly. On the other side of the city, a man nervously informed Lao Wu that the 2 people he had sent to rescue had already been bitten to death by zombies. The news sent a surge of anger through Lao Wu. But when the man suggested avoiding Zhang due to his formidable martial arts skills, Lao Wu's response was swift and brutal. He landed a heavy punch on the man's face, knocking him off balance. Lao Wu sneered and declared that killing him was the key to controlling the entire area. With him out of the way, they would claim all the weapons, resources, and women. He then turned to address the group of criminals he had gathered, his voice booming with authority. He announced that someone had dared to act with impunity on their territory, and worse, had killed 2 of their brothers. Bian, not fully grasping the gravity of the situation, foolishly tried to argue that the 2 men had been killed by zombies, not by Zhang. This only fueled Lao Wu's fury. He struck the man again, silencing him with a warning to keep his mouth shut unless he wanted to lose more than just his dignity. He then clarified to the group that the apocalypse had changed the rules while they had previously operated in the shadows. Now, they were free to take what they wanted, and no one could infringe on that freedom. Not even Zhang. The man who dared to threaten their reign of terror would be dealt with swiftly and ruthlessly. The criminals roared in agreement, Lao Wu's words igniting their bloodlust. With a malevolent gleam in his eyes, Lao Wu vowed that Zhang would not survive the day. He then issued orders to Bian, understanding that this mission was crucial to solidifying their control over the territory. Meanwhile, Zhang and the policewoman arrived at the site where the dungeon key had supposedly fallen. She asked what they were looking for as they began searching the area. He explained that they were searching for an essential key that he needed to retrieve at all costs. Sensing the gravity of his words, she pressed for more details. He described the key as unique in shape and easily recognizable, urging her to be vigilant in their search. Determined to help, she joined the search with renewed focus. As the sky began to darken, he knew the key would start to emit bright rays, making it easier to spot. He was deep in thought, strategizing their next steps, when suddenly she called out that she had found a key. He quickly turned to her, a flicker of hope in his eyes, only for his anticipation to be dashed when he realized it wasn't the right key. He instructed her to discard it and continue the search. As they resumed searching, her sharp eyes caught something unusual. Behind a nearby dog's paw, she spotted glowing green eyes peering back at her. Momentarily startled, she pointed it out to him. Those weren't just any eyes. They belonged to a mutated dog, a creature far more dangerous than the zombies they had been dealing with. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he knew they were in for a fight. The mutated dog was a formidable opponent, and with its enhanced abilities, he gripped his weapon, preparing for the confrontation, while the policewoman steeled herself for the battle ahead. The search for the dungeon key had just taken a deadly turn. It was a level 2 mutated dog, and the sight of its sheer size and strength was enough to unsettle anyone who charged at them with a menacing growl. He fired 2 shots quickly, but the agile beast dodged effortlessly. The policewoman beside him was equally helpless. The dog's speed and unpredictability exceeded their expectations. As the massive dog lunged at him, he instinctively braced himself for a vicious attack. However, instead of feeling sharp teeth sink into his flesh, he was met with something entirely unexpected. The dog began frantically licking his cheeks, its tail wagging furiously. He was caught off guard, struggling to comprehend the bizarre behavior of what he had assumed was a dangerous creature. The policewoman watched in disbelief as the dog licked him, saying, "Looks like it's trying to turn you into a chew toy, or maybe just a really moist snack." He looked closer at the dog, and a flicker of recognition crossed his face. There was something familiar about the dog's tail, something that sparked a memory from his childhood. He recalled a time when he had encountered a small, hungry puppy desperately trying to steal food from a drunken man. The man had retaliated cruelly, striking the puppy with a glass bottle and stepping on its tail, breaking it in the process. Young Zhang, unable to stand the sight of such cruelty, had devised a clever ruse to protect the puppy. He convinced the man that the dog was infected with dangerous bacteria, which successfully scared the man off and saved the puppy from further harm. He had felt a deep sense of accomplishment and relief that day. The dog had remembered him and was expressing its gratitude in the only way it knew, with eager licks and wagging tail. Touched by the dog's affection, he reached into his pack and pulled out a cookie. He offered it to the dog, which gratefully accepted the treat, devouring it in seconds. This small act of kindness stirred something within him, making him reflect on the bond he had shared with the dog as they grew up, now reunited under the most unexpected circumstances. Standing before the fully grown and mutated dog, he realized that this was the very same puppy he had saved all those years ago. The policewoman, still observing, expressed her amazement that he could recognize the dog despite its transformation. She was curious about the peculiar name, Yellow Pill, that he called it. He explained with a faint smile that the name was a nod to the dog's appearance when it was a stray, a small, round yellow ball of fur. The name had stuck with him ever since, a reminder of the innocent creature he had once protected. As he finished explaining, Yellow Pill resumed its affectionate licking, seemingly overjoyed to be reunited with its old friend. The policewoman laughed, genuinely touched by the sight. At that moment, she saw a different side of him, a softer, more compassionate side that stood in stark contrast to his usual tough and hardened demeanor. Across the city, the three girls sat tensely around a table. The atmosphere was heavy with unspoken frustration when Li abruptly stood up, pointing an accusing finger at Liang. She demanded to know if there was any food left in the backpack. Liang firmly denied it. Li, unconvinced and increasingly agitated, insisted that she had seen canned meat inside earlier, accusing her of hoarding the food and refusing to share. Liang retorted that just allowing her to eat anything was already generous, and that if she wasn't satisfied, she could give up the crackers she had. But shameless and relentless, Li tried to snatch the backpack from her, pushing the boundaries of decency. Liang's frustration boiled over as she reminded her that the food had been entrusted to her by Zhang, and she had no right to take it. Refusing to back down, Li resorted to her old bullying tactics, demanding that they split the food evenly and accusing Liang of using Zhang's name to intimidate them. The argument escalated, voices rising and tempers flaring, until Pooh finally stepped in, urging everyone to calm down. She pleaded with them to be thankful for what they had and not to waste their energy on unnecessary conflicts. Still seething from Li's audacity, Liang resolved never to give her any more food, no matter what. Though Pooh's intervention prevented the situation from spiraling out of control, it left a bitter taste in her mouth. Li realized that if Teacher Pooh hadn't intervened, they might have managed to get the remaining food. The atmosphere remained tense, but Pooh's calm words had at least restored a fragile semblance of order among them. Outside, Zhang suddenly sneezed, causing the policewoman to be concerned. She asked if he was coming down with something. With a wry smile, he joked that it might be because someone missed him. He then suggested they search the area for resources, noting that this location should be rich with supplies. She agreed, noting their good fortune in having a flashlight to locate the key. Otherwise, finding it in the darkness would have been nearly impossible. He advised her to turn off the light, thinking that the absence of illumination might help spot the key because it glows in the dark. They continued their search, absorbed in their task, unaware of the ominous presence that lurked in the shadows, inching closer. In the pitch-black surroundings, he spotted a faint glimmer of light. His heart raced as he wondered if this was the key they sought. He dug and, to his immense relief, unearthed the dungeon key. He shouted with triumph, and the policewoman cheered along with him. But their celebration was short-lived. From the shadows, a long, writhing tongue shot out. Before they could react, an enormous mutated lizard lunged forward, its sticky tongue snaring the policewoman with a sickening slurp. As she was about to be devoured, Zhang acted swiftly. Drawing his mountain dagger, he unleashed Cartesian strength with a mighty swipe, severing the lizard's tongue and freeing her from its grasp. She stared in stunned silence at the massive creature, while he, breathless and alert, prepared for the next attack. The lizard, undeterred, lashed out with its sharp claws. He deftly dodged its strikes but was briefly caught off guard as his loyal dog, Yellow Pill, sprang into action. The dog engaged the lizard, its movements agile and determined, drawing the beast's attention away. Taking advantage of the distraction, he jumped up and drove his dagger into one of the lizard's eyes. The creature roared in fury, thrashing wildly as his stamina began to falter under the relentless assault. Even though he was exhausted, he stayed determined, his focus locked on subduing the beast. As the lizard charged again, Yellow Pill bravely threw itself between him and the monster. Despite his urgent shouts to move, Yellow Pill stood its ground, roaring defiantly and shielding him from the ferocious beast's assault. As Yellow Pill defended Zhang, the dog's bravery made Zhang joke, "Looks like my dog's auditioning for a role in a monster movie. Best supporting canine." Yellow Pill ignored his words and charged at the lizard, biting fiercely. The lizard retaliated by whipping its tail, sending the dog flying. The lizard didn't stop there and tried to grip it with claws. Seeing his loyal pet in dire straits, he rushed to block the lizard's next attack. He blocked its attack with his dagger but couldn't resist the strength of the dino lizard and got thrown away by it. Now towering over Zhang with its mouth wide open, the lizard seemed poised to devour him. Just then, a sharp blade streaked through the air, cutting through the lizard precisely. The policewoman had managed to defeat the monster with a single slash. The beast immediately gets grounded. Exhausted, he sat down, taking a moment to catch his breath. He expected such a ferocious act from her. He gently stroked Yellow Pill's head, praising the dog for its bravery. "Well done," he said, relieved to see that Yellow Pill had shown remarkable courage despite being a dog in the face of danger. Yellow Pill responded by licking him all over, leaving him covered in slobber. The policewoman chuckled at the scene, her earlier tension easing now that the immediate threat had passed. As they caught their breath after the fight, two suspicious men stealthily approached and quickly concealed themselves. It seemed Lao Wu's delegates had arrived. Unaware of the looming threat, he continued his work, methodically digging into the head of a lizard. The policewoman, intrigued, questioned him about his actions and observed a crystal covered in green blood. He explained that this crystal was a crucial resource in their post-apocalyptic world. He urged her to examine it closely, suggesting it held more than magical properties. When she asked if the crystal had any inherent magic, he hinted that it had even greater secrets once she understood its true nature. The policewoman's curiosity was piqued, and she pressed for more information. True to form, he insisted on a condition before divulging more details. The policewoman, however, was unimpressed by his offer. She found it audacious for Zhang to impose conditions on a police officer, and decided she could uncover the crystal's secrets alone. He was taken aback by her immediate rejection, something he hadn't encountered from females before, unlike Xin and Liang, who had been more receptive. She, having decided, turned to leave, stating that with everything settled, it was time for them to part ways. He was taken aback by how swiftly their brief friendship had ended. Hesitantly, he called after her, admitting he had a somewhat unreasonable request. Given the perilous surroundings, the harsh environment, and the many threats they faced, he proposed that teaming up might offer better coordination and safety. She considered his suggestion, stroking her chin thoughtfully. He felt dejected and hung his head, questioning why he seemed so pathetic. Yellow Pill patted him gently despite his despondency, offering a small comfort. Finally, the policewoman looked at him with a hint of appraisal. She remarked that while his behavior was odd, he didn't seem like a wrong person. Extending her hand for a handshake, she introduced herself as Mo Ye. Relieved and grateful, he shook her hand and introduced himself in return. While they were talking, two shady figures crept up, their eyes falling on a gun hidden in the rubble. One of the men eagerly grabbed the weapon and whispered to his companion. The other quickly clamped his hand over his friend's mouth, hissing for him to stay silent to avoid alerting their targets. They swiftly followed them as they were about to leave. Suddenly, they were confronted by two hoodlums from behind. One of the hoodlums ordered him to surrender, claiming they had no choice. The second hoodlum, bristling with anger, retorted that Lao Wu had instructed them to kill, not capture. With only one of the hoodlums brandishing a gun and preparing to shoot, the situation was dire. These two were out for revenge for their fallen comrades, determined to make him pay for their brothers' deaths. But, after half a day, the anticipated gunshot never came. Mo, puzzled by the delay, inquired about their assailant's identity. He revealed that these men were criminals, much like the one they had previously dispatched. The gunman's face turned awkward as he glanced behind him. Why wasn't he firing? His companion chastised him for his incompetence, revealing that he hadn't disengaged the safety mechanism. The gunman, bewildered, asked what the safety was, admitting he was a guard who had never handled a real gun before. His partner was equally shocked, realizing the guard's arrogance was unfounded. As the gun's safety lever clicked off, the Yellow Pill zombie dog sprang up from below, causing both men to freeze in terror. The creature lunged at one of them, sinking its teeth into his hand. His scream for help echoed through the area as he desperately called out to his brother, Dao, who was already trying to escape. Realizing the relentless nature of the zombie dog and the futility of seeking help, Dao's panic escalated. Seizing the moment, Mo sprang into action with swift precision. She efficiently neutralized the remaining threats, her movements a blur of expertise. In a quick and decisive motion, she kicked Dao in the face, sending him crashing to the ground. The sight of Mo's impressive combat skills left him with no doubt. Crossing her again would be a serious mistake. With the two hoodlums now restrained and struggling, he took a firm stance. His tone was stern as he demanded answers. He made it clear that if they wanted to avoid losing too much blood, they needed to reveal Lao Wu's whereabouts immediately. Lao Wu was now strolling through the hallway where Zhang had previously taken down the zombies. He ordered Bian to collect the crystals from the undead's heads. Bian, however, was confused and suggested eating first, as he was starving. Lao Wu, known for his cruelty even toward his own men, insisted he focus on the task. To him, these crystals were valuable and essential. though Bian saw them as worthless debris. He struck Bian in the head, compelling him to work without further complaints. Lao Wu himself didn't fully understand the purpose of the crystals, but their frequent recovery from zombies intrigued him. The hidden uses of these crystals were a mystery to him, yet he was convinced of their significance. The scene shifted to the three girls. They were resting in a safe room within the media center, having found temporary refuge. However, Li, eyes sharp with malevolence, opened her eyes. After ensuring Teacher Pu was sound asleep, she focused on Liang. Rising quietly, she gripped a sharp shard, her expression filled with dark intent. To put her vile plan into action, Li approached Liang with a cold determination. She had always felt overshadowed by Liang, who acted superior with Zhong's support. Now, Li was set on eliminating her and seizing the resources that could secure her own survival. As she prepared to strike, the unexpected voice of Teacher Pu called out to her, causing a jolt of fear to run through her. Startled, Li quickly hid the glass she had been holding behind her back and turned to face the voice. She put on a facade of innocence, pretending that she needed to use the bathroom. Her act of desperation was apparent as she shuffled away with a wretched expression, her mind racing with frustration. Once inside the bathroom, Li's composure shattered. The chance to carry out her plan had slipped through her fingers, leaving her seething with rage and disappointment. Her tears flowed freely as she struggled to come to terms with her failed attempt. Her moment of despair was abruptly interrupted by a violent pounding on the bathroom door. The harsh sounds reverberated through the small space, each thud intensifying her panic. Li's heart raced as she realized her time was running out. The confrontation she had so carefully planned was slipping away, and she was now trapped in a situation that threatened to expose her and undo everything she had tried to achieve. The atmosphere inside the room grew tense as Li re-entered and asked Teacher Pu, who was trying to break down the door. Liang, her voice trembling, assured her that the door was locked tightly and no zombie could break it. But the response came in the form of a massive strike that shattered the door, sending splinters flying. The girls, now drenched in fear, realized with horror that a gang of ruthless criminals had breached their sanctuary. Panic surged as the intruders made their way into the room. The danger was palpable. The girls were at the mercy of these merciless assailants. With a menacing grin, one of the criminals snatched a weapon from Liang. Her voice quivered with desperation as she demanded to know their intentions. The thug, puffing on a cigarette, grabbed her face and sneered, asking her what she thought. Another young criminal approached Teacher Pu, who shouted in alarm, demanding he keep his distance. Li saw an opportunity to escape in the chaos and began to slip away. The gang captain, Dong, barked orders to his subordinates to capture her immediately. One of his men, appearing conflicted, reminded Dong that Lao Wu had only instructed them to kill Zhong and take the girls. Dong, his patience wearing thin, roared back that Lao Wu was not present, and they were to follow his orders now. He commanded them to go after the fleeing Li. A hefty criminal took off in pursuit, with one of his comrades warning him not to enjoy her alone. The urgency of the situation heightened as the girls faced an escalating threat, their chances of escape dwindling as the criminals closed in. Teacher Pu was gripped tightly around the waist by one of the intruders who had shown an unsettling interest in her long ago. With a chilling calmness, he told her not to be afraid and asked if she remembered him. Trembling with fear, she demanded to know who he was. The man smirked as he revealed that he had once been a student at the school and had attended her classes. She recognized him immediately as Bai, a notorious troublemaker known for his persistent and inappropriate advances. His history of harassment had made him a constant threat, and now he was finally getting his chance to act on his dark intentions. Similarly, Liang was forcefully restrained by another thug. This man recognized her from her online presence as a celebrity on Kuaidu's platform. Both women were subjected to degrading and violating treatment as the criminals reveled in their power and control, indulging in their cruel and despicable behavior. On the other side, Zhong tightly bound the two scoundrels after they revealed Lao Wu's identity and location. Mo suggested they return to the bureau to gather more people, but he wasn't interested in that approach. He preferred a direct strike rather than a drawn-out plan. Mo warned him that Lao Wu had additional allies and that they should be prepared before moving. Despite her concerns, he acted swiftly, dismissing the need for extensive preparation. Mo, although hesitant, agreed to go with him. Curious about the key he carried, she asked what its purpose was. He explained that the key represented more than just an object. It symbolized unlocking more profound mysteries and understanding the changes in their world. A bit puzzled, Mo questioned what he meant by unlocking the future. She wondered if the key was indeed as significant as he suggested. His response was cryptic but clear. The world had changed dramatically with the rise of undead, mutants, and crystals. The natural order had been disrupted in ways beyond ordinary understanding, and the key's secrets would only be revealed when they were strong enough to grasp its true power. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to the fat guy relentlessly pursuing Lee down a narrow corridor. His heavy steps echoed as he taunted her, threatening to break her limbs once he caught her to ensure she wouldn't escape again. Lee, cornered at the end of the hallway by a locked door, glanced back to see the fat guy's menacing figure approaching with a wicked grin. He grabbed her by the head with his large hands, declaring that, unlike other girls who ran from him, he wouldn't let her escape in this apocalyptic world. Lee tried to placate him with a mix of cunning and desperation. She vowed not to leave him or mock him. Her words seemed to catch the fat guy off guard, causing him to doubt her sincerity. Seizing the moment, Lee attempted to flatter him, praising his looks and claiming she would do anything for him. As she spoke, she placed his hand on her chest in a bold move. Despite her attempts to seduce and manipulate him, the fat guy remained unimpressed, calling her average-looking. Nonetheless, his loyalty to Dong drove him to drag her back to their hideout. As they returned, Lee's expression shifted to panic upon seeing Teacher Pooh in a dire state. Her clothes were torn, and she had been brutally mistreated. The fat guy mocked her distress, while Dong, observing the scene, remarked on Teacher Pooh's fierce resistance. Despite her attempts to fight back, including biting one of Dong's men and causing a bloody nose, Pooh had been subjected to severe abuse. Lai was overcome with grief at the sight of her mentor's suffering. Dong then turned to the fat guy and noted that Lee had returned with him, hoping to join their group. Despite Teacher Pooh's horrific condition, Lee remained determined to join Dong's faction. Dong Chief asked her if she genuinely wanted to be part of their group, and Lee affirmed her commitment, saying she was willing to do anything required. Unexpectedly, Dong Chief pointed to Liang and told Lee to take care of her, revealing that Liang was her friend. This revelation shocked Liang, who couldn't believe Lee had become treacherous. Without hesitation, Lee approached Liang and slapped her face. Liang gasped in shock, tears streaming down her face. Enjoying the display, Dong Chief ordered Lee to slap Liang even harder. This was an act Lee had long desired, and she delivered each blow with increasing force. Liang's face grew redder with each slap, her cries mingling with her anger and humiliation. She sobbed uncontrollably, calling Lee an evil monster, while Dong Chief's smile widened, satisfied by the show of dominance. Lee pressed her head down. She remarked that the longer one looked at her face, the more repulsive it became. Dong Chief, standing confidently behind her, declared that Lee had now qualified to join their ranks. From this point forward, no one would dare cause her any trouble. The fat guy, beaming with satisfaction, congratulated Lee and enthusiastically welcomed her into their group, emphasizing that she was officially one of them. Dong alerted his companions, revealing that they were once allies of the fourth brother. However, after the fourth brother had become a zombie, they were forced to join Lao Wu and align themselves with him. The fourth brother, who was part of the Axe Head gang, was skilled in martial arts, but Lao Wu was a mere troublemaker, as Dong's companions described him. They complained that Lao Wu, known for his cunning, had taken all the valuable resources they had risked their lives to obtain. Moreover, Lao Wu had ordered them to leave and kill people but had vanished into the shadows, sneaking away without a trace. Upon hearing this, Dong expressed his frustration with Lao Wu's deceitful behavior. He argued that in the apocalyptic world they now lived in, everyone had the opportunity to become a ruler. There was no reason to live under someone else's rule or act as their subordinate. The atmosphere shifted as Dong's words resonated with the group. They began to chant, voicing their discontent with Lao Wu's lack of loyalty and respect. They declared that from now on, they would follow Dong Zi as their leader. With a unanimous agreement, they appointed Dong Zi as the new head of the gang. The atmosphere shifted as the hoodlums began to plot to eliminate Lao Wu. Lao Wu, once and for all. The group then moved to the cafeteria to set up an ambush, waiting for Lao Wu to make his return. As Dong Chief entered the room, he was struck on the head by a bone, causing him to cry out in surprise. He demanded to know who had thrown the projectile. Zhong, who had been eating, was taken aback by Dong's presence. He casually mentioned that Dong had returned just in time for their meal, and their luck seemed to be holding. Dong Chief, stunned and angered, saw that he had consumed the precious chicken they had reserved for Dezhou. He demanded to know who Zhong was and what he was doing there. He responded coolly, saying they had planned to kill him, and now he had come right to their doorstep. Dong's suspicion grew that this might be the person fifth brother wanted dead, wondering if his fellow criminals had failed in their mission. Reading Dong's confusion, he revealed that he had already dealt with the two brothers they had sent to kill him, and was now ready to confront Dong himself. Dong's subordinates, seething with anger at him, demanded whether they should kill him immediately. However, his situation worsened when they pushed Liang out of the way. Dong Chief seized the opportunity to taunt him, questioning if he was still so formidable. while Mo, standing beside him, could not help but curse Dong repeatedly. Dong Chief's mocking continued, growing more furious, but he remained resolute, insisting that the girl had no connection to him as they were merely using each other. He declared that Dong's filthy hands and vile words were no longer needed. The confrontation quickly escalated into a violent brawl. He, with precise aggression, drove a dagger into Dong's arm, causing him to lose his composure. In a fit of rage, he ordered his men to kill him all at once. One attacker lunged at him first, but he deftly dodged the strike and countered with a powerful punch that knocked the assailant unconscious. Seeing this, Dong yelled for his men to attack him immediately. As 4 of his subordinates surrounded him, Dong signaled each one's movements, taunting them to distract and unnerve them. His trash-talking only served to heighten the chaos of the fight, aiming to throw them off balance and make their attempts to subdue him more frantic and disorganized. One of the attackers lunged at him with a punch, but his reflexes were lightning fast. He seized the assailant's arm, twisting it with a brutal roll that dislocated it with a sickening crack. The man howled in pain, crumpling to the ground. Meanwhile, another opponent managed to grab a bystander from behind, locking him in a vice-like grip. With a swift, punishing motion, he slammed the victim into the ground, pinning him down by his neck. The scene now turned to a frail, long-haired figure who trembled at the sight of him advancing toward him. However, the burly thug, intent on confronting Zhang himself, shoved the weakling aside. Drawing a knife, the fat man faced him, his eyes gleaming with malice. Zhang darted aside with practiced ease, evading the initial slash and countering with a sharp blow to the fat man's shoulder. The strike did not affect the robust adversary, who retaliated by swinging his knife viciously at him. In a rapid and decisive move, he wrested the knife from the fat man's hand, and with a powerful soaring kick, struck the giant squarely in the face. The force of the kick sent the thug crashing to the ground, unconscious. Dong, watching the fight unfold, realized the sheer strength he possessed. It was clear now why Lao Wu had instructed them to eliminate him. With only one opponent remaining, Dong drew out Teacher Pooh as a hostage, holding her tightly and warning him to surrender. His threats were dire. If he did not comply, Teacher Pooh would pay the price. Dong insisted that they had done no wrong to her, but if he took action, he would be responsible for her death. Behind him, Li stood silently, having switched sides earlier. His eyes were locked on Dong, his mind racing with strategies while Dong shouted at him to kneel, pulling on Teacher Pooh's hair. Suddenly, a brick flew through the air, smashing Dong's face with a dull thud. He collapsed, stunned, into an unexpected nap. Li, smartly switching allegiances again, had thrown the brick. Despite her previous betrayal, her resolve to save Teacher Pooh was unwavering, driven by her gratitude for the teacher's past kindness. Once the criminals were securely tied up with ropes, Li untied Teacher Pooh, expressing her relief and happiness to find her unharmed. Liang, however, could barely contain her disdain and muttered that Li was nothing more than a betrayer. Teacher Pooh, visibly upset, pointed out that Li had just saved her. Mo, clearly displeased, admonished Liang for her lack of gratitude towards Li and Teacher Pooh, who had already suffered enough. Liang retorted that she was new and unfamiliar with the events that had transpired. Zhang, siding with Li's apparent act of bravery, supported her role in saving Teacher Pooh, leaving Liang without any allies to expose Li's true nature. In a surprising turn, Liang embraced him, sobbing and lamenting how much she missed him for arriving so late. Her emotional display stirred jealousy in Mo and sparked a look of determined vengeance in Li, who was on the verge of revealing her true intentions. Meanwhile, Lao Wu, observing the three-colored wheel, clutched a handful of crystals, his eyes narrowing with understanding. He now grasped the source of Zhang's formidable strength. With a determined scowl, he declared that Zhang's survival was now a challenge he fully intended to meet. The subordinate next to Lao Wu stared at the spinning wheel with a mix of astonishment and skepticism. "Can this big rock really draw rewards?" he muttered, his disbelief clear in his voice. Lao Wu, already irked, responded with a sharp punch to his head, silencing his incredulity. The wheel whirred and spun, coming to a halt with a sudden chime. The notification that appeared announced the acquisition of the profession of trainee alchemist. His face twisted into a scowl of fury. To him, the reward seemed like a joke. 20 crystals spent on what appeared to be a meaningless profession. Frustration boiled over, and he kicked beyond, barking orders for him to search the area for anything of real value. Unbeknownst to him, his reckless use of crystals had triggered a mechanism that would release the remaining crystals, making the next draw significantly easier. At that moment, Beyond returned, lugging a heavily loaded bag, clearly packed with items they had taken from Liang earlier. Lao Wu eagerly rifled through the contents. Snack packs, canned goods, and more were strewn about, but one item caught his eye. A vial labeled primary strengthening medicine. The label promised rapid enhancements in physique, speed, and strength, though it came with severe side effects, including intense pain and, potentially, death for those unable to endure it. Bian looked on in astonishment, bewildered by Lao Wu's familiarity with the medicine. His eyes lit up with a sudden realization. His new trainee alchemist profession must have given him insight into the potion's effects. He suspected that Zhang had used a similar concoction to gain his impressive strength. Driven by a mix of curiosity and anger, he decided to test the potion himself. Without a hint of hesitation, he downed the entire vial in one gulp. Almost instantly, his eyes widened, and his veins bulged as his body surged with newfound strength. Bian, alarmed by the transformation, began to move toward the door, intending to call for help. But before he could escape, a massive fist crashed down in front of him, blocking his way. An enormous creature, reminiscent of a shadow serpent, roared menacingly. Lao Wu, determined to test his enhanced abilities, charged forward to confront the beast, eager to see if the potion had truly delivered the power it promised. Meanwhile, Zhang and his team had returned to Shin's hideout. They unloaded their bags and sorted through the loot they had recovered from Lao Wu. Zhang, needing to investigate further, went up to the upper floors but found no one. Liang's urgent call from downstairs brought him back to the first floor, where chaos had erupted in the kitchen. Amidst the mess, a bloody handprint smeared across the wall caught his eye. Above it, written in blood, was a message. Supermarket got the wheel. Zhang's heart sank as he realized this message could be a crucial lead, hinting at a possible clue or direction in their search. Lao Wu stood proudly over the defeated shadow serpent, basking in the admiration of Bian. He was ready to claim victory over the undead, confident they would soon fall before him. However, his triumph was short-lived. Upon arriving to find Dong and the others, he discovered Bian tied up and learned that Dongzi had been killed and his resources stolen. The betrayal ignited a furious rage in Lao Wu. He roared in anger, vowing to hunt down Zhang and kill him with his own hands. He swore to torture him until he begged for mercy, then finish him off by tearing him to shreds. Before he finished speaking, Zhang had already experienced a premonition. Standing behind him, Liang asked if he was okay, wondering why he had suddenly shuddered. He explained that he had a strange premonition. Mo suggested he rest if tired, and Pu advised him to drink water. He mentioned that his companion Shin might be in danger and had left information behind, so they needed to act quickly, starting with the supermarket. Liang, feeling jealous, asked if Shin was his girlfriend, to which he replied that she was a good partner. This response pleased Liang, and she excitedly urged him to prepare to find her. Liang's jealousy over Shin is like the classic love triangle from Manhwa, just without the sparkles and dramatic background music. He reminded them to avoid disrupting him in this operation and emphasized that, as teammates, they needed to contribute effectively. Before the operation, he carefully planned who should accompany him. He considered Liang intelligent and loyal, making her an excellent choice to support him in nurturing Shin. Mo, an expert in close combat, would assist in fighting. However, he questioned whether he should bring teacher Pu. Pu explained that she was skilled in healthcare and knew medical treatments, so she could provide support from the back line. He agreed, but warned them not to be a burden, as he couldn't protect everyone. He asked the police officer if she would assist in the operation, and she readily agreed. They packed their bags and set off quickly. He thought about the urgency of finding Shin and securing a new food source, noting that their current supplies would last only a few more days. Despite having many crystals, they couldn't buy much with them. Mo approached him, curious about his preoccupation. He explained that they would leave some items behind and only bring essential supplies. Mo suggested that leaving items there wasn't safe and offered an idea. He was surprised by her critical thinking, which also solved his worry about the availability of scarce resources in their search. They headed to a police bureau truck, which Mo revealed had been specially transported by her boss. It was one of the best vehicles from the bureau, equipped with armor, hill-climbing capabilities, and a hefty load capacity. He thanked Mo, recognizing that the armored truck would benefit their mission. On the other hand, Lao Wu, seething with fury, stormed out of the media center, determined to kill Zhang. Bian asked what to do with the remaining companions as he made his way. Enraged by the betrayal of Dong and his team, Lao Wu decided to leave them behind and went for the bloodthirsty zombies. He was furious that they had dared to betray him and believed he could handle the zombies alone. Their fate was sealed. He would focus on his mission of vengeance against Zhang. A while later, he drove Mo's military truck from the bureau, skillfully drifting it around corners. The horde of undead barely slowed the vehicle down, their decaying bodies no match for the sheer power of the truck. As he navigated through the chaos, he couldn't help but acknowledge how amazing the truck was. Sitting behind him, Pooh sighed in admiration, muttering how it was no wonder that Mo, a guard far more capable than ordinary people, had managed to secure such a beast of a vehicle. Liang, on the other hand, felt a pang of jealousy toward Mo. She always craved the opportunity to prove her worth and to be the one earning credit for her contributions. His attention shifted to the map in his hand. Shin had failed to mark the location of the supermarket, leaving them to navigate blindly. He suggested that after they passed the intersection, they should start hitting the supermarkets one by one. His eyes scanned the road ahead, but before he could finish, a horde of undead surged forward, not with their usual mindless aggression, but as if they were fleeing something far more terrifying. Liang's sharp voice urged everyone to look at the side of the truck. An enormous mutated ape had appeared, tearing through the zombie corpses like they were nothing more than snacks. His heart raced as he recognized the creature, a mutated white ape known for its immense strength and vicious temperament. He was only a level 1 fighter, completely outmatched by the beast. Yet, a flicker of hope ignited as memories from his past life surfaced. He had faced white apes before and knew some of their weaknesses. He ordered everyone to sit tight, saying it was over and that it had noticed them, his voice tense as he stomped on the gas, desperate to flee. But fate wasn't on their side. The truck veered sharply and crashed into an electric pole, the impact jolting everyone inside. The giant white ape leaped onto the truck with a thunderous crash, its weight nearly toppling the vehicle. Liang and the others were thrown around inside the cabin, barely holding on. Through the shattered window, the ape's piercing red eyes locked onto Zhang, who fought to regain control of the truck. Despite his best efforts, the ape clung to the vehicle with relentless tenacity, its enormous hands gripping the metal quickly. Realizing the situation was beyond his control, he made a split-second decision. "Mo, take the wheel!" he barked, unbuckling his seatbelt. As Mo slid into the driver's seat, he swung the door open and launched himself at the ape, slashing wildly with his weapon. But his attacks barely scratched the creature's thick hide. The ape's tail snapped out, wrapping around him like a vice before flinging him to the ground with bone-crushing force. Pain exploded through his body as he hit the pavement, his vision swimming. Mo brought the truck to a screeching halt, shouting his name, but he was too dazed to respond. The white ape dismounted from the truck, its massive frame casting a shadow over him as it loomed above him. The ape roared, its furious cry echoing through the streets, its eyes glowing with murderous intent. With a snarl, it raised its fist, poised to deliver a devastating blow. The white ape crashed to the ground, shaking the surface and asserting dominance. Its next target was him, but a barrage of bullets shot past at a critical moment. It was Mo, but instead of deterring the beast, her intervention only fueled its rage. The white ape charged at Mo with a furious roar, sending Pooh and Liang into a panic. Mo fired relentlessly, but her shots seemed ineffective against the massive creature. The ape's rage intensified, and it swung a mighty punch at Mo, who narrowly dodged. Enraged further, the ape began to circle the truck, and Mo seized the opportunity to aim at its face. The white ape howled in fury, grabbing Mo and tossing her through the air. The ape's fury didn't end there. It seized the truck with its colossal hands, flipping it over and sending Pooh and Liang tumbling out. With a savage swipe, the ape clawed at Pooh's back, its intent clear. Liang, paralyzed with fear, could do nothing to help. As the situation peaked, Zhang and his dog appeared with a fierce howl. They charged at the white ape, momentarily distracting it. The massive and unwieldy ape struggled against Yellow Pill's relentless bites. He took full advantage of the distraction. As Mo shouted his name, she tossed him a gun. With renewed determination, he gripped the gun tightly, his eyes focused as he used his crafting skills to enhance it. Penetration increased by 20, stability increased by 20, he noted with satisfaction. His modifications had given the weapon a significant boost. In the midst of his efforts, the giant white ape grew agitated as it grappled with his dog. With a powerful throw, the ape sent the dog flying, its jaws clamping down on it. Infuriated, the ape swung a massive fist toward the dog, making him fly into the air and then prepare to deliver a decisive blow. He, quick on his feet, shouted to the beast, "Hey, ugly white furry monster, your weakness is here." He aimed carefully at the ape's vulnerable point and fired. The bullet struck precisely, leaving the beast no time to react. The white ape roared in pain, its massive from crashing to the ground. The shot had been so effective that the ape's mutated, enhanced muscles revealed the exposed bones of its back. His strategic shot had hit the spine, the creature's critical weakness. The white ape's death was swift, a testament to the effectiveness of his enhanced ammunition. He marveled at the enhancement's importance. Without it, even his knowledge of the ape's weakness might not have been enough to secure the kill. As the fight concluded, he felt a surge of triumph. His 10 years of experience had proven invaluable, and his crafting skills had made the difference in this grueling battle. As Liang worked on disinfecting Poo's wound, though Poo managed to endure the sting of the alcohol, Liang asked her to hold on just a bit longer. He, concerned, flung open the truck door and was met with an awkward sight. Poo, almost wholly undressed, was receiving first aid from Liang. The scene was both urgent and uncomfortable, making them all feel uneasy. Mo, noticing the situation, inquired about Poo's condition. He reassured her that she was fine and there were no major life-threatening injuries. It was just a scratch that required some medicinal care. After handling Poo's situation, he turned his attention to his dog, who had sustained significant injuries. Fortunately, the wounds weren't critical, but they were enough to impair the dog's mobility and effectiveness. He knew he needed to find medicine quickly to aid in the dog's recovery. He resolved to search for something that could speed up the healing process and get his loyal companion back to full strength. Liang noted that Poo's wound was bleeding continuously and required significant anesthetics and medical tools to address it correctly. He responded that he could use his artisan skills to create stitching tools, but acquiring anesthesia would be more challenging. He recalled a past experience where he had stitched wounds without anesthesia and realized that Poo would likely struggle with such a painful procedure. Determined to address both Poo's and his dog's injuries, he planned to search for medical supplies and surgical resources in a nearby area that had a private hospital. Liang then inquired about the supermarket and her friend Xin. He assured her that Xin was competent and could protect herself, emphasizing that she was destined to become a 9-star veteran, which meant she would likely be safe. However, Mo disagreed with his plan. She proposed splitting into 2 groups. He would take Poo to find the necessary medicine, while she would head to the supermarket to locate Xin. He quickly rejected the idea, citing concerns about potential mutated beasts on the road. He questioned whether it was wise to take such risks, preferring to focus on the immediate medical needs and the safety of everyone involved. Mo responded firmly, insisting that he should not underestimate her abilities as a guard. She reminded him of her track record and asked if he had doubts about her capabilities. He was momentarily at a loss for words, but eventually gave in, advising her to proceed cautiously. He explained that the noise from the wheel could potentially attract zombies, as their presence might cause them to unconsciously move towards the source of the sound. He advised her to remain vigilant. As he waved goodbye, he reflected on past experiences where teammates had betrayed him, hoping for a different outcome this time, though his optimism was tempered. At the same time, Lao Wu and Bian were speeding down the road on their bikes. He, growing increasingly impatient with their progress, remarked that the stronger the wind, the better he felt. When Bian asked about their destination, he explained that, based on their careful calculations and analysis, they could be confident that Zhang would be searching for something specific. This meant that Zhang was likely to head towards the most probable location. Lao Wu assured Bian with renewed confidence that he knew exactly where they needed to go. Despite Bian's repeated questions about their destination, he remained steadfast. He explained that they had lost valuable resources, which would soon be depleted, so their next logical stop would be the supermarket, searching for new supplies. Supermarkets, he noted, typically held a wide array of resources essential for survival and travel. As they continued their conversation, they arrived at the area's largest supermarket, Yuehua Supermarket. Lao Wu approached it with determination. Upon reaching the entrance, Bian cautioned him, "Be careful. It looks like there might be undead inside. Who knew a shopping trip would come with a free side of undead terror? Next time, I'll stick to online shopping." He dismissed the warning with a wave. After all, he had just obtained a new job and had spent half the day searching. When they entered, they found the supermarket had been looted, to his dismay. While they were inspecting the store, a packet of flour tumbled from its hiding place. Looking up, they were startled to see an undead creature looming before them. Its terrifying appearance caused Lao Wu to pause, though it appeared to be searching for something rather than attacking. They cautiously followed the undead, hearing unsettling noises as they moved. Soon, they discovered a group of undead gathered around something. While the subordinate was visibly frightened, Lao Wu's excitement grew. Meanwhile, Mo navigated the city streets with the confidence of a seasoned officer. Familiar with the layout, she approached a nearby supermarket, checking its exterior before cautiously venturing inside. After a thorough search, she found the shelves bare. The store had been stripped clean. Mo recalled his warning about the wheel attracting zombies, but this location seemed unusually quiet. With only one major supermarket left in the area, Yuehua Supermarket, she wondered what Zhang was up to. At the same time, he and his team arrived at the hospital, racing against time. Poo was on the brink of collapse, her wound bleeding profusely. Liang, observing the severity of the blood loss, urged him to hurry, fearing that Poo's life might be in jeopardy if they didn't act quickly. He focused on locating the essential medical supplies, hoping the medicine and injection rooms would have what they needed. In his haste, he narrowly avoided a giant tail that crashed down near him. His eyes widened in shock as he faced a grotesque sight. A colossal green tail attached to the skeletal remains of a mutated zombie croc. The overwhelming presence of another powerful mutant made him question why he was encountering so many formidable enemies today, feeling a surge of desperation as he battled against these nightmarish threats. He cautiously observed the massive tortoise-alligator hybrid from a distance. Unlike Yellow Pill or the white ape, this creature was in a league of its own, far more potent than any mutated beast he had encountered. In his previous life, it had taken him nearly a decade to realize that these monsters weren't native to Earth. They had appeared long before the apocalypse and were known as guardian beasts. These creatures were drawn to areas with unique resources or hidden rewards, fiercely protecting them. The tortoise alligator was a level 2 guardian beast, a formidable opponent that he knew he couldn't handle with his current strength. However, he believed his skills might allow him to slip past the beast and retrieve the necessary resources. Without wasting any time, he sprinted back to the armored truck. Seeing him return in such a hurry, Liang immediately asked if he had managed to find the medicine. He didn't answer. Instead, he went straight for the weapons, rummaging through the supplies to arm himself. Concerned, Liang asked why he was gearing up and whether a monster was inside the hospital. He confirmed her suspicions, admitting that a powerful beast was lurking within. However, he reassured her that he could handle it on his own. He instructed her to stay with Pooh and continue caring for her wounds. Despite his calm demeanor, Liang couldn't shake off the confusion. Watching him load up on weapons and gear made her uneasy, but she trusted his judgment. He, on the other hand, knew that the situation was dire. The thought of facing a guardian beast with his current abilities was daunting, but he was determined to retrieve the remaining supplies they desperately needed. He hoped his plan would work, allowing him to navigate the hospital's dangers and bring back what was necessary to save Pooh and secure their survival. He planned to restrain the guardian beast, knowing he would need every advantage he could get. He decided to use specially crafted arrows, enhancing them with his craftsmanship skill, which had proven invaluable in the past. This skill allowed him to significantly strengthen weapons, miraculously improving their penetration and control over the materials used. He explained to himself that their artisan skill, while only at a beginner level, could still enhance an item's quality, provided he had materials of equal quality and quantity. The enhancement process effectively doubled the power of the arrows, much like how it had previously amplified the effectiveness of bullets against the white ape. This skill wasn't just about changing the form of objects, it fundamentally increased their quality and toughness, almost as if he was wielding a form of magic. After painstakingly working on the arrows and bow, he strengthened them into weapons of the next level. But he knew that wasn't enough. He also needed a large metal net to hold the beast in place. In his past life, he had witnessed people using a technique known as mosaic fusion, a method that combined two completely different materials while preserving their individual strengths. Drawing on that memory, he decided to fuse iron wire with a green net, hoping the combination would be strong enough to deal with the tortoise alligator. He carefully combined the materials, applying his craftsmanship skill to strengthen the net, making it as tough and resilient as possible. With all his preparations complete, he set out to lay his trap. He charged forward with determination, pulling the bowstring taut and launching the reinforced net toward the tortoise alligator. The net successfully entangled the beast, wrapping around its massive form. The guardian beast let out a furious roar, thrashing about in an attempt to free itself. His heart raced as he saw that the net had caught the creature's tail, temporarily holding it back. Wasting no time, he dashed into the medicine warehouse, eyes scanning the shelves filled with abundant supplies. He felt a surge of relief. With these materials, Pooh's surgery would have a high chance of success. However, he knew better than to assume the fight was over. The tortoise alligator was a formidable opponent, and it wasn't long before it began to break free. The beast's enormous strength rendered the metallic net and arrows ineffective, snapping them with a mighty thud. It roared once more, its fury undiminished, and began to creep stealthily towards him, intent on reclaiming its territory. He quickly gathered as many medical supplies as possible, but the growing sense of danger was impossible to ignore. He could hear the beast's heavy footsteps approaching and knew he had to move fast. The tortoise alligator was closing in, and he realized he was running out of time. His mind raced, thinking of his next move as he secured the last supplies. Fifth brother, having ruthlessly wiped out every last undead in the supermarket, surveyed the now eerily silent area with a sense of grim satisfaction. The once bustling aisles were now empty, save for the scattered remnants of his latest battle. As his gaze fell upon a gleaming, brand-new wheel sitting in the corner, he felt a spark of renewed hope. Without wasting a moment, he ordered Bian to collect the crystals from the fallen corpses. The task was executed with quick efficiency, and soon, Bian returned with a pile of crystals. However, upon inspecting the wheel, Fifth Brother's frustration mounted. The wheel required 10 crystals to operate, but Bian had only managed to gather 9. The missing crystal was a glaring, infuriating oversight. The idea of having to wait for another undead to appear, just to complete the set, was almost unbearable. Seeing the storm brewing in his leader's eyes, Bian nervously suggested that the wheel might attract more undead if they gave it some time. They only needed 1 more crystal, he said, trying to placate Fifth Brother with the hope of additional undead. But this attempt at reassurance only ignited Fifth Brother's rage. His patience snapped, and with a roar of fury, he struck Bian across the face. The force of the blow sent Bian stumbling, and Fifth Brother's eyes blazed with disdain. He spat out his anger, denouncing Bian as utterly useless. Merely a worthless piece of trash who couldn't even be relied upon for something as simple as gathering crystals. Meanwhile, Mo approached the supermarket, her instincts on high alert. The silence that greeted her was unnerving. The usual sounds of groaning undead were conspicuously absent, leaving an unsettling calm in their place. As she carefully stepped inside, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly amiss. The silence felt like a heavy, oppressive blanket, and she wondered if all the zombies had been wiped out or if something even more sinister was unfolding. On the other side, Liang heard the roar of the tortoise alligator echoing ominously from outside as it relentlessly pounded on the door of the medicine room. Unable to stand by and do nothing, she bolted towards the hospital, her heart pounding in her chest, her voice carrying an urgent plea as she called out for him, praying fervently that he was unharmed. When she arrived, the sight before her sent a chill down her spine. The tortoise alligator was furiously battering the tightly locked door. Fear gripped her as she questioned what monstrous creature this could be. Inside the room, he was painfully aware of his dire situation. He knew all too well the strength of a level 2 guardian beast, recognizing that such formidable foes were not easily overcome. The beast had already entered a berserk state, and he realized with grim resignation that he was likely trapped in the room for some time, with the genuine possibility of facing a brutal defeat. Outside, Liang quickly deduced that he had no means of escape. Determined to help, she resolved to divert the monster's attention. Her eyes then fell upon 3 enormous eggs nearby, and a plan began to form in her mind. Meanwhile, from his corner, he caught sight of Liang, his heart sinking with fear and frustration. How had this silly girl ended up in such a perilous situation, only adding to his burdens? The tortoise alligator, relentless in its assault, finally succeeded in breaking down the door. Its massive head lunged forward, aiming directly for his face, and the room echoed with the sounds of impending danger. Despite her fear, Liang quickly honed in on the tortoise alligator's eggs. With determination overtaking her dread, she sprinted toward them, her voice rising frantically to draw the creature's attention. Standing her ground in front of the menacing beast, she braced herself as it roared and charged toward her with terrifying force. Desperate to protect her, Zhang, with no clear plan in mind, rushed forward, his voice cracking as he shouted for Liang to run. But instead of fleeing, Liang made a bold move. She shoved one of the eggs off its perch. His heart plummeted as he realized the grave danger she had just put herself in. He screamed at her to get out of there as the alligator's focus instantly shifted to the rolling egg. In a heartbeat, the creature abandoned its chase of her, redirecting its attention to save its precious offspring from smashing against the wall. Seizing the brief window of opportunity, she attempted to escape but stumbled over a rock, nearly falling. Zhong was at her side instantly, grabbing her hand tightly, and together they fled the scene. As they ran, their frantic footsteps echoed in the air. She glanced back and noticed that the tortoise alligator had stopped its chase, its attention fully consumed by the safety of its eggs. Breathless but on high alert, he explained that the creature wouldn't stray far from its offspring, knowing its instincts would keep it close to the nest. He thought they might finally be clear, but an uneasy feeling lingered in his chest. Despite their narrow escape, the threat still loomed, and he couldn't shake off the worry gnawing at him. Anger and concern boiled over as he harshly grabbed Liang by the arms, demanding to know if she had a death wish. He reminded her of the peril she had just narrowly avoided. Liang winced and told him he was hurting her, but he didn't relent, insisting that the pain was nothing compared to the risk she had taken. She defended her actions, saying she had acted impatiently, wanting to save him. Still frustrated, he told her she didn't need to worry about him, that he didn't need her to save him. Tears welled up in Liang's eyes. Though he remained stern, a silent gratitude flickered within him for her courage. Meanwhile, back at Hua Supermarket, Mo sifted through the remnants of the chaos and soon discovered the wheel. However, Her attention quickly shifted to the unsettling sight of numerous zombie corpses scattered around. The sheer number of them raised questions in her mind, but she didn't have long to ponder the mystery. Her thoughts were interrupted when Fifth Brother emerged from the shadows. A smug smile tugged at his lips as he entered the scene, noting that the wheel didn't have to wait for the undead. Instead, it had lured in this younger woman. To his amusement, she was a police officer. But Mo's resolve only hardened at his words. Unfazed by his smug demeanor, she steeled herself for the inevitable confrontation, her eyes narrowing with cold determination. She had no intention of letting these men enjoy what they believed to be a stroke of luck and get readily prepared for battle. On the other side, Zhang was meticulously tending to Teacher Poo's wounds. His hands moved with practiced precision as he stitched her up, each careful motion designed to ensure her recovery. As he worked, he reassured her that once the anesthetic wore off, she would likely feel some pain, though the discomfort would gradually fade. Poo's face flushed a shade of red at the thought, and she asked with a hint of worry whether the injury would leave a scar. Zhang chuckled softly, telling her that keeping her life intact was the real blessing. With the stitches completed, he suggested she take some time to rest and recover. As Zhang was preparing to leave, Liang approached, her concern for Poo evident. However, the silence was abruptly broken by the loud rumbling of Liang's stomach. The sound was both surprising and embarrassing. With a sheepish grin, Zhang suggested they take a break to grab a bite to eat before meeting up with Mo. The idea of a shared meal seemed to lift their spirits slightly, a welcome distraction from the tense atmosphere. Meanwhile, Mo was embroiled in a fierce battle with Lao Wu. Despite her relentless barrage of powerful kicks and punches, Lao Wu remained eerily unaffected. His expression was a disturbing mix of admiration and amusement, as though he were both impressed and entertained by the confrontation. Each of Mo's strikes was met with his own swift counterattacks, his movements blindingly fast. Mo's frustration mounted with each passing moment. She could see that Lao Wu wasn't just a formidable opponent. He seemed almost invincible. Every punch and kick landed with full force, yet he took them with a casual ease that suggested he might be more than just exceptionally skilled. His resilience and speed hinted at possible mutations or enhancements. Despite her growing doubts, he continued to taunt her, urging her to give her all in the fight. With a determined scowl, Mo accepted his challenge. She launched into a series of rapid, high-powered strikes, each one aimed with deadly precision. Her fist connected solidly with Lao Wu's face, a punch that would have knocked most fighters out cold. Yet, he blocked it with a nonchalant ease, his defenses as impenetrable as ever. His smirk widened, clearly enjoying the challenge. Mo's frustration only fueled her resolve as she pressed on, determined to find a way to break through his seemingly invincible guard. After several more intense rounds of combat, Bian, nervously cowering and avoiding the fight, saw a glimmer of opportunity. He realized that if he could assist his boss in defeating Mo, he might gain favor and secure an item from the wheel, elevating himself to hero status in this grim, apocalyptic world. Summoning all the courage he could muster and shedding his fear, he decided to seize the chance to launch a sneak attack on Mo. Without warning, Mo was struck from both sides as the subordinate launched his surprise assault. The suddenness of the combined attack overwhelmed her, sending her crashing violently into a wall. She crumpled to the ground, dazed and disoriented. The shock of the second attacker had wholly caught her off guard, adding to her mounting frustration. Furious at the intrusion, Lao Wu spun around, his face contorted with rage. "Who permitted you to interfere?" he demanded, his voice seething with irritation. He scornfully questioned whether the subordinate truly believed he needed help to defeat a mere woman. As he raged about the powerful effects of the medicine he had consumed, he boasted with cold confidence, claiming he could easily take down 10 policemen if he chose to. With a fierce grin, he turned back to Mo, his eyes gleaming with cruel intent. He landed a brutal punch to her face, the impact echoing through the room. Grabbing her by the collar, he prepared to deliver a final, devastating blow. The fight had escalated to a perilous climax, and Mo now faced her formidable adversary's full, unrestrained wrath. As he prepared to end the fight, Zhang emerged from the shadows. Catching him off guard, he swiftly forced him to release Mo, stepping in to face the real challenge. He found himself suddenly confronted by an actual opponent. The two stood face to face, each other's worst nightmare. Lao Wu spat venomous words, recognizing the figure before him. He was just about to come find Zhang, and here he was, delivering himself right to his doorstep. But, utterly dismissing his presence, he turned away to check on Mo. Mo reassured him that she was all right, though the brutal beating she'd endured left her clearly shaken. He knew he had to avenge her. Seeing Mo so severely injured, Lao Wu briefly entertained the thought that he might be the villain in this scenario. But in his eyes, it was Zhang who was the real villain. the one who had stolen his resources. He was about to speak when Zhang suddenly lunged at him, cold fury in his voice. He didn't care who this man was. No one touched his people. In a tense moment, Lao Wu swiftly ducked to avoid a brutal punch aimed at him. Reacting with quick reflexes, he countered with a punch of his own. Although Zhang blocked the strike, he was taken aback by the surprising strength behind it. The realization hit him hard. This opponent must have consumed the same potion, also elevating him to a one-star warrior. Despite this newfound power, Lao Wu's attacks were too predictable, allowing Zhang to easily evade them. Seizing an opening, Zhang delivered a powerful kick to Lao Wu's ribcage, forcing him to stagger backward in pain, his rage intensifying. He taunted his opponent, challenging him and questioning whether he truly believed a potion made him stronger. He dared him to continue so he could show him just how outmatched he was. Blinded by fury, Lao Wu lost all sense of strategy and began attacking recklessly. Zhang exploited his opponent's lack of composure, delivering another precise punch to the same side of his ribcage. The blow shattered Lao Wu's kidney, sending waves of excruciating pain through his body. Driven mad by pain and frustration, Lao Wu's attacks became increasingly erratic, but Zhang dodged each one effortlessly. Despite their equal status as one-star warriors with comparable strength and reaction speed, his decade of experience surviving in the apocalypse gave him a decisive edge. His next punch landed squarely on Lao Wu's face so quickly that he couldn't react. The force of the hit sent him flying through the air before crashing violently to the ground. Dazed and desperate, Lao Wu struggled to understand who Zhang was, suspecting he might be an exceptional elite soldier or a highly skilled assassin. In a final, frantic attempt to save himself, he begged for mercy, offering to become his slave and do anything he wished. As he pleaded, his eyes darted nervously. Secretly, he grasped a hidden dagger, preparing to strike if Zhang turned his attention away to check on Mo. In a split second, he lunged with the dagger, but Zhang was ready. He grabbed the attacking arm and with a swift motion broke it. Lao Wu screamed in agony, and Zhang followed up with a powerful kick to his chest, sending him flying once more. Calmly, Zhang told him that he had encountered plenty of people like him before, and appreciated the attempt at a covert attack. But it would only work against someone who wasn't Zhang. In his pathetic state, he cried out for help from beyond. Despite his fear, the subordinate quickly rushed over and picked him up, and together, they fled the supermarket. As they disappeared from view, Mo turned to Zhang, questioning why he let them go so quickly. He, with a calm resolve, replied that those two would soon meet their end. "They don't need me to dirty my hands," he added, knowing their fate was already sealed. As they watched their adversaries walk away, Zhang turned his attention back to Mo, his concern evident. He asked her how she was feeling after their intense encounter. Mo reassured him that, with some rest, her injuries would heal. Zhang's response was a mixture of relief and a bit of humor, noting that she was fortunate her bones weren't broken. Mo, with a sly smirk, teased back that the ribcage of a police officer was built to withstand more than just a few punches. The shared light-hearted moment helped to ease the tension between them. With the mood lightened, Zhang gestured towards the direction of the wheel Shin had mentioned earlier. This shift in focus signaled a potential turn in their journey, hinting at a brighter prospect ahead. Meanwhile, Lao Wu and Bian walked side by side, their conversation seemingly friendly as they tried to find comfort in their shared predicament. Lao Wu muttered curses under his breath about Zhang, expressing his frustration over how he had been left crippled. He lamented over missed opportunities, wishing he had taken the chance to kill Zhang when he had it. Despite the physical pain and bitterness, Lao Wu was resolute in his determination to rest, recover, and eventually return to exact his revenge. Suddenly, Bian came to a halt and shifted the tone of their conversation. He spoke more earnestly, addressing Lao Wu with a serious demeanor. Bian confessed that he needed to understand what it meant to truly share both enjoyment and suffering. He revealed that, despite having followed Lao Wu through countless dangers since the Jiang River, he had never experienced genuine satisfaction or pleasure under his leadership. This unexpected revelation took Lao Wu by surprise, making him pause to consider Bian's words. The subordinate continued, questioning why only Lao Wu got to eat meat while the rest of them struggled just to have soup. He pointed out that someone like him, who had been loyal for so long, shouldn't be treated as an underling for life. Realizing his mistake, Lao Wu tried to placate him, addressing him as Big Brother, and urging him not to do anything rash, fearing the situation was about to turn against him. But the subordinate had already made up his mind. He grabbed Lao Wu's broken arm and twisted it cruelly, taunting him with the reality of his situation. He demanded that Lao Wu hand over all the crystals, promising to help keep them safe while suggesting that he stay behind to recover, though both knew there was no safe place left. Standing on a narrow street, they were suddenly surrounded by zombies. Lao Wu, now desperate, begged Bian to save him, even offering all the crystals in exchange for his life. But the subordinate coldly refused, telling him there was no way he could escape with the crystals. In a heartless movie, the subordinate abandoned Lao Wu, leaving him to be devoured by the approaching zombies. Lao Wu could do nothing but scream in terror as the monsters descended upon him, ending his life brutally and tragically. The cries of Lao Wu echoed through the night, catching Liang's attention. Fear gripped her as she wondered if Zhang and the others were in trouble. But to her relief, Zhang soon appeared, carrying an injured Mo in his arms. He reassured Liang, explaining that Mo was hurt, but they needed to find a safe place to stay for the night first. Liang mentioned hearing the cries earlier and realized they must have come from the two people who fled the supermarket. She regretted not having run them down with the vehicle, knowing how evil they were now. Later that night, they found a secure spot to rest. Zhang and Liang stayed awake to keep watch while the other girls slept. Liang asked if they should hide the wheel to prevent others from using it. Zhang explained that the wheel's position could be moved, but once the news about it spread, it would undoubtedly cause a fierce battle. However, they had already spent and taken most of the rewards, including enhancement medicines, immune boosters, a beginner's rank enhanced metal spirit necklace, and a silver shield. He felt grateful for the workers who had helped him gather the resources, allowing him to quickly obtain these items. Liang placed the necklace around her neck, admiring how pretty it looked. Seeing her admiration, Zhang jokingly reminded her that the necklace wasn't just a decoration, but an essential tool. Liang, slightly embarrassed, retorted that it was useless to have accessories to impress zombies, though deep down, she still found the necklace appealing. Zhang sighed, reflecting on the fleeting nature of their situation. He realized the importance of unity and acting together to survive. He admitted to Liang that he wasn't entirely altruistic in saving them. He wanted them to become his allies. He needed them to trust him and prove their own capabilities, knowing that only then could they grasp the power that would secure their future. Mo and Liang stood beside Zhang, bewildered by what he had just revealed. He took a deep breath and began to explain, stressing the significance of what he was showing them. He held up the fortification medicines, and one of the rewards spun from the wheel. These medicines, he said, were designed to enhance a person's physical capabilities. They could boost muscular strength, increase speed, and even improve the body's metabolism and immunity. Mo quickly grasped the implications and asked if these enhancements were akin to superpowers. Zhang shook his head, clarifying that it wasn't quite as dramatic as that. The medicine they had was more about essential fortification, capable of improving bodily functions by 20–30%. This enhancement would make it significantly easier to handle ordinary undead threats. Still feeling uncertain, Liang muttered that even a 20% increase might not be sufficient for her, given her current physical state. Zhang offered reassurance, explaining that the medicine's value lay in its ability to push beyond one's limits and add that extra 20%. He encouraged Liang not to underestimate her own potential and to recognize the boost the medicine could provide. Mo, still skeptical, asked if this was the reason behind his impressive strength. Zhang confirmed that, without the medicine, he wouldn't have been able to match her. Despite this, Mo remained unconvinced. She pointed out that Zhang seemed to have a profound understanding of the apocalypse and possessed skills beyond typical police duties, leading her to question his true identity. Liang agreed, noting that Zhang had always seemed out of place, as if he had seamlessly adapted to the world of the undead from the moment they met him. Mo pressed further, demanding to know if Zhang had any insight into the cause of the apocalypse. Feeling the pressure and sensing his true nature might be exposed, Zhang quickly shifted the conversation. He told them that all his information came from Xin, suggesting that they should ask her directly if they wanted answers. This deftly avoided any direct revelations about his past, as he couldn't reveal that he had been reborn. To his surprise, Liang willingly accepted the explanation, commenting that Xin must be pretty special. Zhang was taken aback by how easily they accepted his diversion, realizing that his attempt to deflect had been more successful than anticipated. Liang then asked if the medicine was as powerful as Zhang claimed, and whether there were any side effects. Zhang acknowledged that there were indeed risks. He explained that carelessness could result in severe consequences, such as deadly bleeding from all 7 orifices. He reminded them that benefits and dangers often went hand in hand. He didn't pressure them to decide, leaving it entirely up to them. Liang was taken aback by the potion's potential dangers, her face reflecting her shock and concern. Mo, displaying her usual bravery and determination, stood resolutely and asked to try it. Zhang handed her the medicine, commending her courage but cautioning her that the pain of evolution could be excruciating for most people. He advised her to prepare herself and consider taking it the next day to ensure she was ready. Seeing Mo's resolve, Liang finally found her own determination. She realized she couldn't continue to burden the team, and felt a heavy weight lift from her shoulders by making a proactive choice. Despite the risks, she asked Zhang for the medicine as well. Zhang agreed but emphasized that both of them should wait until the next day to take it, giving them time to prepare adequately for the ordeal ahead. He advised Liang to be more practical about her attire, pointing out that dressing so fancy wasn't ideal for action. Her eyes widened in surprise at his bluntness. Meanwhile, Teacher Pooh, who was trying to settle down for the night behind them, seemed a bit envious. She stirred and told them to keep the noise down, as she needed to sleep. Zhang, however, had no intention of resting. He remained vigilant, knowing there was important business to attend to the next day. He stood guard outside with his dog, maintaining a watchful eye. In the dead of night, a figure suddenly emerged from the darkness. Startled, Zhang shouted out loudly, grabbing his army knife and charging towards the intruder. To his surprise, it was Liang. Confused, Zhang demanded to know why she was outside and not sleeping. Liang explained that she was feeling scared. Zhang assumed she was having second thoughts about taking the medicine and asked if she regretted her decision. To his shock, Liang wrapped her arms around him tightly, revealing that it wasn't regret, but fear that drove her. The thought of possibly dying after taking the medicine the next day and never having the chance to see him again was what had kept her awake. Her fear was palpable, and Zhang, though taken aback, felt sympathy for her. Sensing Liang's genuine fear, Zhang spoke earnestly. He explained that obtaining power wasn't always a matter of luck, and having solid abilities meant he wouldn't let her go quickly. He told her he would ask her to join him in fighting for his goals. He then asked if she would still be willing to stand by him if given the chance. Liang, touched by his sincerity, responded gently. She admitted that she understood and appreciated his offer. She knew he had saved her life. If given a chance, she would always support him. Her fear seemed to dissipate, leaving her resolute. Zhang felt a swell of pride at her response and then asked Mo if she would support Liang. Mo, with her usual straightforwardness, inquired about his following plans. Zhang explained that barring unforeseen circumstances, he intended to return to the hospital he had visited and head south through the city. Mo declined to join him, stating that she had other matters to attend to. Zhang felt her absence would blow his team's strength, but accepted her decision. He reassured Mo that his promise to give her strength still stood. Inspired by his commitment, Mo assured him not to worry. She promised she would return quickly once her tasks were completed, and if all went smoothly, she would head to Pearl Lake. She also handed him a set of bullets she thought might be helpful, noting their importance. Zhang acknowledged their value and said that he would have asked for them if she had not offered them. As morning broke, everyone gathered outside, ready to begin the day with the fortification medicine. The three of them had swallowed the medicine just a few minutes earlier. Almost immediately, they were hit by its effects, feeling worse than ever and unable to speak, though their bodies began to show signs of the potion's impact. Zhang reassured them that their condition would improve soon, and once their strength was restored, they would be ready to hunt zombies. He cautioned them to avoid provoking too many zombies and to be especially careful around crystal or mutated zombies, advising them to escape if they encountered any. Zhang then prepared to head to the hospital for his planned important business. As he approached the hospital, memories from his past life resurfaced. He recalled a story about this place. It was once the site where people had discovered 3 powerful guardian beasts. These creatures had wreaked havoc, killing many nearby survivors due to their immense strength. Eventually, a level 6 superhuman soldier intervened, defeating the beasts and acquiring a map and an egg that one of the monsters had laid. The map was reputedly used for crafting blade-type weapons, and soon after, many members of that superhuman's army were seen wielding superb silver-colored battle swords. This time, Zhang was determined to claim the map and the egg. Zhang cleared the undead area to ensure he wouldn't be interrupted while he pursued his target. With the area secure, he began his final preparations. Reflecting on his previous encounter with the tortoise alligator, he remembered how unprepared he had been and how his arrows had lacked the necessary power. Although his pistol had more firepower than a bow, it wasn't enough for the task. Determined to enhance its effectiveness, Zhang used the sharp claws he had obtained from a lizard. He transformed standard ammunition into armor-piercing rounds by applying embed magic to both the bullets and claws, significantly boosting their penetration and lethality. He instructed Yellow Pill to stay behind and watch, alerting him if any undead approached. With everything set, Zhang took a deep breath and leaped forward, heading straight for the guardian beast with his newly fortified weaponry. The tortoise alligator was lazily resting when it suddenly sensed a human presence. Recognizing Zhang's familiar form, the beast tensed and prepared to strike. It lunged forward, but Zhang had anticipated this move and had set up a strategic trap. The creature's fury ignited when it spotted a red cloth, a decoy Zhang had placed. He seized the distraction, swiftly taking a shot. The bullet drove through the beast's tough hide, penetrating its formidable skeleton. Furious, the tortoise alligator retaliated with a massive tornado claw strike. Zhang, however, was quick on his feet and dodged with precision. Standing his ground, he brandished his Nippo army knife and targeted the creature's tail. The strike jolted the beast, lifting him toward its face. Zhang capitalized on the moment, leaping and driving his knife into the creature's upper jaw. With the knife lodged firmly in its mouth, Zhang's gaze locked onto the exposed throat of the monster. He took a deep breath and with unwavering resolve muttered, "This ends now," before tightening his finger on the trigger of his pistol. A final, decisive shot rang out, sealing the creature's fate. Zhang then began to search the surrounding area, quickly locating the prize he had sought. A coveted map. The map detailed 3 distinct ranks: the frontier rank, the dancing sand, and the rare moonlight battlefield, marked with a purple tier. This map came with both a passive and an active skill, promising valuable enhancements for their journey. Zhang remembered that offensive skills were prohibitively expensive for the first 5 years when he first started the apocalypse. Even though their price had decreased over time, they remained among the most costly items. Weapons and equipment with skills were impressive, but the Moonlight Battlefield sword, with its dual skills, was scarce and valuable, nearing historical rank in price. However, the map required nearly impossible materials, about 1,000 rank 5 magic crystals. With his current resources, Zhang knew he had little hope of crafting it soon. Despite the challenges, Zhang refused to give up on the sword. He was determined to find a way to craft the Frontier Moon skill, recognizing that the Dancing Sand and Moonlight Battlefield ranks could be acquired with enough money. With a resolute thought, he reminded himself of his unique position as a reborner and dismissed any fear of obstacles. Turning his attention to a new discovery, Zhang found a valuable item called Small Evolution Medicine among the remains of the tortoise alligator. He explained that while this medicine could significantly enhance human physicality, he was curious about its effects on pets. Would it enable them to evolve as well? He called his dog, lazily lounging nearby, urging it to come over quickly. Zhang was eager to test the evolution medicine on his pet, hoping it would boost its strength. His determination to leverage every advantage available was unwavering, and he was keen to see if this medicine could significantly enhance his loyal companion. Yellow Pill quickly bounded over, eager to try the new medicine. Zhang and his dog shared the homemade pot, and soon Zhang felt his strength and spirit recovering rapidly, even more so than with level 1 superhuman medicine. He instructed Yellow Pill to raise its head and pay attention as it consumed the tortoise alligator's egg and its meat. A golden crystal emerged on the dog's head, indicating the activation of a new ability. Zhang asked Yellow Pill to demonstrate its newly acquired skills. The dog leaped up, and its fur instantly transformed into sharp blades, shooting in targeted directions and embedding fur blades into the opposite wall. Zhang was amazed to discover that the dog's innate ability was a fur attack known as Secret Needle Barrage. However, he soon noticed that Yellow Pill's fur had disappeared, leaving the dog looking different. Zhang consoled the dog, acknowledging that despite its changed appearance, its skill power remained impressive. He then instructed Yellow Pill to finish the rest of the food and save the other 2 for later. With that task done, Zhang moved to a nearby car to continue crafting weapons. He needed to make the most of his time. He began working on the Frontier Moon weapon, using Neo's army knife, the tortoise alligator's claws and teeth, and a level 2 magic crystal. After activating his artisan skill, the car was transformed into an extraordinarily sharp blade. Zhang tested the blade with a light swing, slicing through a nearby metal pillar easily. After successfully crafting weapons, Zhang created additional weapons for his groupmates. He focused on strengthening their combat abilities to ensure they were well prepared for future challenges. After a while, Zhang returned to Liang's location with the remaining essence of the tortoise alligator egg and meat. He asked if Mo had already left and inquired about their health and any changes in their strength. Liang replied that they still had the cores, and that dealing with that monster hadn't been difficult. She noted that they could easily handle zombies now that they had evolved. With a hint of irony, Liang added that she didn't understand why Pooh was so scared of them. Liang was slightly annoyed by Zhang's comment, pointing out that they had all experienced discomfort and nausea. She explained that it was just a matter of getting used to it, acknowledging that the first time was always the hardest. Despite her attempts to downplay it, Zhang felt a deep satisfaction. It seemed that his final investment had finally paid off. He handed over the egg essence and watched as they reacted with surprise, asking him about the food that could make them stronger. In his mind, Zhang thought about the future. Once they had endured the effects of this strengthening fluid, he planned to head to Pearl Lake. He was determined to obtain whatever was there, knowing it would be crucial for his next steps. Although Zhang had given them the essence from the first egg, Both Liang and Pu, being MILFs, ended up consuming the second egg as well. This left Zhang with only one tortoise alligator egg, which he needed to preserve carefully for future use. As he observed Yellow Pill, Pu remarked on the dog's drastic appearance change, noting how it had become quite unattractive. She compared it to how some girls might worry about gaining weight after eating a lot, but she acknowledged that the transformation had significantly enhanced Yellow Pill's physique. Zhang then called Liang over, intending to give her an advanced whip. He said he wanted her to try it out and see if it suited her. Liang eagerly accepted the whip and tested it immediately. As she wielded it, flurries of blue light flashed intermittently, and the ground cracked beneath its force. Liang felt a surge of excitement, realizing that the whip felt like it was made just for her. The weapon seemed to merge seamlessly with her movements, and she felt a strong connection with it. She mentioned that she had previously studied some sports and now felt confident that this whip would be a valuable asset in assisting Zhang. Turning his attention to Pu, Zhang asked what kind of weapon she wanted. Feeling tense, Pu responded that she also wanted a gun, but hadn't yet decided on the type. Zhang advised her not to rush the decision, noting that it was normal for someone who had only used a kitchen knife in peaceful times to be unsure about selecting a new weapon. Liang suddenly reminded Zhang that it was time to head to Pearl Lake. Zhang acknowledged the reminder, but explained that their previous preparations were for the upcoming operation. He warned that the journey might be fraught with danger, including encounters with powerful mutants, large numbers of undead, and possibly even hostile humans. He asked if the girls were sure they wanted to join him. Liang, excited to assist, was eager to go, but Pu remained uncertain about her usefulness on this mission. She left the decision up to Zhang. Zhang dismissed her concerns, stating that they would proceed together. He had previously mentioned the potential dangers, but had not yet revealed the possible rewards of their success. With that settled, they began their journey. As they traveled in the car, his thoughts drifted back to 10 years ago, to his past life. After consuming all the food and drinks at home, he had finally mustered the courage to venture outside. The silence was eerie, but the monster's roars soon began to echo from all directions, even from the rooftops, as creatures leaped down towards him. In a panic, he saw the streets filled with undead and screamed loudly before running frantically. Surprisingly, the undead did not attack him, but instead moved towards the source of the emerging bright light and sound. Deciding to return home, he waited at the door, watching as the city descended into chaos and exploded. Only through survivors' accounts did he gradually learn what had transpired that day. At Pearl Lake, Zhang and his group encountered a peculiar wheel floating in the water. Unlike traditional wheels, this one displayed only a single image: a gold ingot. All that was required was a level 1 magic crystal to activate it. Once engaged, the wheel operated like a dungeon system, providing mission hints and previews of potential rewards. These rewards included various evolution medicines, mystical weapons, profession scrolls, and unique concoction methods, essentially everything one could hope for. The outcome of the battles held here in the past remained shrouded in mystery. Those who participated either perished or vanished, though some survivors had become incredibly powerful over time. His group finally arrived at the location, stepping out of the car with anticipation. They were on the brink of accessing numerous powerful items, which could potentially make them the most formidable forces in the city. 10 hours earlier, in the lobby of a logistics company in Honghai, the CEO, Li, found himself surrounded by soldiers dressed in camouflage uniforms, their grim gun barrels aimed directly at him. Captain Ye inquired if Li had taken enough time to consider their proposition. Li, puzzled by the situation, questioned what Captain Ye meant, asking if it implied that, should he refuse to comply today, he and his comrades would have to bid farewell to this world. Li silently analyzed his circumstances. He had 3 level 1 fighters by his side, 11 guns at his disposal, so why was he forced to face these military personnel at such a critical moment? He pondered whether more time could have changed his situation, and noted that the young soldier standing beside Captain Ye already seemed to be a level 2 evolver. Captain Ye responded to Li's question, stating that if they did not join the military's operation, they would not allow any unforeseen factors to jeopardize their plan. At that moment, one of Li's subordinates, evidently concerned, asked if they were genuinely prepared to engage in combat with the soldiers, but Li quickly silenced him. Captain Ye then proceeded to outline the terms, assuring them that no effort would be wasted pointlessly. He emphasized that obedience would be rewarded and that, even if Li did not trust him personally, he should at least place some faith in the military uniform Captain Ye wore. Wang Ding, who stood behind Captain Ye, interjected, suggesting that after this mission, CEO Li might even attain a level of power comparable to his own. He questioned why Li would be willing to forfeit such an opportunity. Although Li was reluctant, he had to acknowledge the military's overwhelming strength, their advanced weaponry, and their self-sufficiency. Ultimately, Li made the difficult decision to cooperate with them. Despite this, Captain Ye did not extend his hand to seal the agreement with Li. However, Wang Ding did, expressing hope that they could progress even further together in the future. Li then asked Captain Ye if he could finally reveal the details of the operation they were discussing. Captain Ye, in a measured tone, explained that they had received intelligence about a very special monster expected to appear at Pearl Lake. He mentioned that everyone was eager to compete for it, and he had strategically arranged an underground outpost nearby to guard something referred to as the Wheel. As Captain Ye spoke, Qin Xiaobo Bian informed him that time was running short. Captain Ye's voice crackled through the radio, assuring Qin that he would arrive shortly and instructing him to keep a close watch over the wheel. Meanwhile, a pair of binoculars remained fixed on everything occurring near the wheel, scrutinizing the surroundings with meticulous care. Zhang, sitting atop the truck, noted that the group was almost fully assembled. He then jumped down, asking if everyone was ready for the operation. He instructed Liang to take the radio and find a hiding spot once the operation began. Liang was to report immediately if she spotted a monster about 1 meter tall carrying a gold bag. Meanwhile, Pu was assigned to observe the area and provide real-time updates on the combat situation, paying particular attention to the movements of the small monster. Zhang himself planned to set up an ambush near the bank, and he emphasized to Pu that she must report to him immediately if the little monster's movements were detected so he could converge on the location she indicated. Zhong reassured Pu that her position would be relatively safe, and if she encountered a situation beyond her control, she should retreat. He added that if the opportunity presented itself, she could find a high vantage point to report the battle situation and the little monster's position to the team. Pu, understanding the instructions, pointed to a nearby building and asked if it would be a suitable spot. Zhang agreed, telling her to wait for them there. Before concluding, Zhang reiterated the importance of reporting immediately upon discovering the target. He warned that, while the small monster lacked any special abilities, it was extremely crafty and could summon a horde of mutated creatures, making it crucial that no one attempted to act alone. Without any warning, a massive light suddenly burst forth from the direction of Pearl Lake. Zhong immediately recognized that the gather wheel had been activated, signaling the official appearance of the treasure monster. According to the plan, he urged his team to move quickly. The treasure pot began to emit an intense, powerful light, so blinding that it temporarily robbed everyone of their sight. As their vision gradually returned, Qin Xiaobo was the first to spot a small, one-eyed monster standing atop the treasure pot, eyeing the group with a keen interest. The creature then reached for a greenish-blue conch shell hanging at its waist and began to blow into it, producing an ancient, eerie sound that reverberated through the air. This unsettling noise sent a chill down Xiaoqin's spine, filling him with an overwhelming sense of foreboding. As anticipated, the undead within the city who could hear the conch's call went berserk, rushing toward its source in a frenzied mass. Meanwhile, the soldiers maintained their disciplined formations, ready to move out at a moment's notice. Captain Ye, with binoculars in hand, kept a close watch on the situation unfolding around Pearl Lake, though his expression betrayed his growing concern. The staff officer standing beside him quickly reported the latest developments. From our position as the origin, Li's team reached the designated spot at 2 o'clock. Hu's team also arrived at their assigned location at 10 o'clock. However, Xiaobo's team, positioned at 12 o'clock, has completely disappeared from radar, and we've lost all contact with them. Additionally, unknown forces have been detected at 9 o'clock and 4 o'clock, their numbers ranging from dozens to hundreds. At the same time, large swarms of mutated creatures have been spotted advancing toward our teams from multiple directions at high speed, and our forces are now surrounded by a vast number of undead. Captain Ye smiled, his expression a mix of determination and dark humor as he spoke. They were at the center of the city after all, and hadn't they been surrounded by zombies from the very beginning? There was no real surprise in their situation. With renewed courage, he addressed his men, calling out to them with a commanding voice. The soldiers gathered around him, their attention fixed on their squad leader, ready to hear his words. He reminded them that he could have led them into the tomb of the dead, pointing out the countless mutants converging from all directions to surround them. He acknowledged that many of them were worried about their families, feeling the weight of fear and hesitation in their hearts. But then he asked the crucial question. Why were they still there? What had driven them to put on those uniforms in the first place? Captain Ye shared his own struggles, telling them that he was just like them, coming from his own hometown, facing the same fears and uncertainties. With a darker tone, he spoke of his own family, his parents, his wife, and his children. He admitted that he didn't even know if they were safe. But he challenged them to consider whether these fears were reasons to give up, to abandon the beliefs that had brought them to this point. If they didn't retreat now, they might very well die in that place, But Captain Ye reminded them of what they were at their core. Soldiers, born to fight. This was war, and they had to become stronger. Stronger than the mutants, stronger than the world that sought to crush them. Even if they were to die, they would die wearing their uniforms, smashing that place to pieces and embracing the final glory of the world. His powerful words ignited a surge of courage within the soldiers. United in purpose and resolve, they began to chant with one voice, declaring that glory belonged to them. Zhang had a clear panoramic view of the rousing scene unfolding before him. Even in the bleakness of the late apocalypse, witnessing this unimaginable sense of collective honor among the soldiers filled him with admiration. At that moment, he respected them deeply. Silently, Zhang wished them good luck, though he remained uncertain about what was unfolding on the other side of the battlefield. Then without warning, clang, clang, clang! An extremely loud sound of electricity crackled from the riverbank, tearing through the tension in the air. His gaze shot upward. He caught sight of what was happening. The sudden opening of the dimensional gate left him stunned. He knew immediately that the spatial black hole leading to the wastelands had opened. The treasure monster's conch was not just a signal to summon undead and mutated creatures from the surrounding area, but also a beacon for powerful mutants from the wastelands. As the electric sound intensified, Zhang watched in growing dread as two crimson steel beasts' heads gradually took shape inside the swirling black hole. These were no ordinary creatures. They were level 2 monsters, and their arrival spelled disaster. No sooner had they emerged than their eyes locked onto a soldier. In an instant, they were upon him, and he was killed instantly, his life snuffed out in a brutal flash. The crimson steel beast's eyes gleamed with a twisted excitement, their mouths releasing deep, menacing growls of satisfaction. The chaos unfolding before Zhang was overwhelming, filled with deadly power and imminent danger. The stakes had escalated beyond anything he had anticipated. As the battlefield plunged into darkness and danger, Zhang realized with a sinking heart that the real fight for survival was just beginning. The two crimson beasts had just left when a goat-like creature appeared from the black hole, level 2 monster terror war goat. But it wasn't a herbivore like a goat, rather a bloodthirsty fiend. Zhang rushed up to the roof of the building, kicking the door open and quickly scaling the stairs to the rooftop. He was out of breath as he surveyed the scene, his eyes fixed on the ominous black hole. To his alarm, the black hole began to churn once more, spitting out mutants. These were smaller than the crimson steel beasts, level 1 mutants known as purple cloud war ants. Despite their lower level, their sheer numbers were unsettling. Zhang counted hundreds of the creatures and felt a surge of worry. He glanced at the dimensional gate, wondering just what level of the wastelands it was connected to. The little monster continued to blow its horn, and his anxiety grew. The sudden influx of so many strong and troublesome monsters meant that dealing with them would be far from easy. From his past experience, Zhang knew that since the apocalypse began, not only had wheels fallen from the sky, but countless golden saint lights had also struck the ground with devastating force. As he recalled a vague image of a monster dominion, he remembered that such a place was teeming with creatures not native to Earth. These monsters roamed freely, and the very atmosphere of that place could plunge humans into deep despair. It was a realm filled with bizarre flora, precious ores, and various resources, alongside many unknown treasures. As he continued to observe the opening of the dimensional gate, he braced himself for whatever would emerge next. To his horror, a hand reached out from the black hole, gripping a massive iron bar. The figure that emerged was grayish-black, entirely nude, and bearing sharp fangs. His heart sank as he realized it was a zombie ape. Unlike ordinary monsters, the zombie ape was a level 3 zombie, a far more formidable and dreadful adversary. The apocalypse had only just begun, so how could a level 3 zombie appear so soon? In his past life, he had heard that humans typically evolved to level 3 in about 3 weeks, with the fastest record being just that. The appearance of such a high-level zombie, or any 3-star monsters, before even 3 weeks had passed, was inconceivable and deeply troubling. The zombie ape was effortlessly demolishing giant buildings as though they were mere toys. In front of the monstrous creature stood Lee's team, and with a single massive hand, the zombie ape seized one of the men. The unfortunate individual had no chance to resist. The zombie ape simply tightened its grip. Blood poured from between its fingers, cascading down and splattering onto Lee's face. Lee looked on in stunned disbelief at the sheer number of beasts pouring into the area. Pooh, hidden atop a car, observed the unfolding chaos. The radio next to her crackled with Zhang's voice, asking for the current location of the treasure monster. Pooh responded that it was still by the lake. He then inquired about the colossal terror goat, wanting to know its whereabouts. She informed him that it was located to the left, behind the Angshin building. He instructed her to keep him updated on the terror goat's location and to report any unusual activity in the area. Switching his position by jumping from one building to another, he told Liang to stay close to his position. Pooh's update came when the treasure monster was now wearing a purple sky warrant and moving along the Pearl Lake. Zhang confirmed that the portal was not yet closed. Based on his past experiences, he knew that the treasure monster could only blow the flute once to summon all the mutants. However, the flute had already stopped. So why was the abyss still open? Confused and frustrated, he decided to set aside his questions. Without hesitation, he leapt to the ground and drew his moonblade. With a swift gust of wind, he beheaded 3 undead creatures, quickly snatching the magic crystals from their foreheads. He made sure not to waste any of these valuable small crystals. Suddenly, a desperate cry for help pierced the chaos. He turned his attention toward the source of the sound and saw that the terror goat was attacking survivors. Although the terror goat was a level 2 monster, which was still 1 rank above him, it was one of the easier mutants to handle. Moreover, the terror goat had a yellow earth-colored fibrous material in its body, which was known to be a valuable young treasure. Feeling a surge of determination, he charged directly at the terror goat. Using the momentum from his run, he pushed off the ground, propelling himself into the air. He spun mid-flight and landed forcefully on the terror goat's back. With lightning-fast reflexes, his wrists moved deftly as he drove his blade downward. The moonblade tore through the terror goat's tough skin, plunging into its body with precision and force. As Zhang continued to stab the back of the terror goat, those who had fled earlier watched in disbelief. They couldn't believe that Zhang had managed to leap onto the monster's back and break through its defenses. Considering everyone was a level 1 superhuman, how had Zhang managed such a remarkable feat? The terror goat, enraged by the tiny human on its back, began to spin and jump violently, trying to shake Zhang off. Zhang, fully aware of the terror goat's intentions, pressed his blade in even deeper. The beast let out a furious roar, lifting its head high in a vain attempt to lessen the pain. Onlookers were stunned to see that his blade could actually pierce the terror goat's body, while their own attacks had barely made a dent in its fur and skin. Zhang, gripping his blade with all his might, struggled to maintain his hold and prevent being thrown off. To stay on the terror goat's back a bit longer, he had no choice but to keep his blade firmly embedded in the creature, using every ounce of his strength to stay in place. The terror goat grew increasingly violent, charging straight into the nearby building. The impact sent shards of glass and debris flying, causing Zhang to sustain some injuries. Seeing that this tactic was effective, the terror goat became even more reckless, rampaging wildly and smashing into everything in its path. Eventually, the creature came to a halt, realizing it had found a way to deal with Zhang. Understanding that staying on the terror goat's back was no longer viable, Zhang pulled his blade out with all his strength, and foul-smelling blood sprayed from the wound. He quickly leapt down from the goat's back, but as soon as he landed, the terror goat's foot came crashing down where he had just been. The beast fixed its fierce gaze on Zhang, preparing for another attack. Gathering his strength, Zhang readied himself for a decisive blow. He sprang into the air with agility, swinging his arm and driving his blade straight towards the terror goat's vital spot. Unlike the back, this area was devoid of bones and filled with soft, meaty tissue. The terror goat, writhing in pain, flung Zhang away and immediately charged at him with its massive horns, intent on finishing the fight. Zhang had been hurt, and blood sprayed from his mouth. Despite spitting out blood, he managed a grim smile, knowing that the terror goat was definitely dead. The creature made a final futile attempt to struggle before collapsing to the ground. The survivors from earlier, who had secretly approached to see the outcome, were taken aback. Zhang cast a cold glance in their direction. One of the middle-aged evolved individuals asked how Zhang had managed to defeat the monster. He responded curtly, advising them that if they had decided to run earlier, they should have done so completely and not interfered now. He pointed outside, making it clear that he did not welcome their presence and instructed them to leave immediately. The survivors' faces fell, their expressions sour. They insisted that while Zhang had indeed killed the monster, they had also fought it earlier, claiming they deserved some of the credit. Zhang gave a cold laugh, dismissing their claim. He retorted that they hadn't even managed to breach the monster's skin, and yet had the audacity to claim credit. The survivors, feeling a mix of shame and anger, began to shout and point at Zhang, expressing their frustration. They argued that such a high-ranked monster could be exchanged for valuable resources and questioned why they should just give up. Zhang, however, had no intention of wasting time on them. He coldly shouted, instructing them to get lost. Although Zhang was only level 1 evolved at the moment, his reputation preceded him. He had already taken down numerous undead and mutants, instilling a sense of awe rather than anger among the group. The atmosphere among them shifted immediately. Their morale seemed to deflate, The man at the center of the group, authoritative and stern, warned him to be smart and get lost. They were determined to take the item, and if necessary, they would deal with Zhang harshly. The middle-aged man noticed his injuries, one arm dangling uselessly, and advised him to think carefully before acting, stressing that rashness would only bring him more harm. His tone was laced with a genuine concern for his safety. Meanwhile, a larger, more boisterous member of the group pointed out that the man in the center had killed someone just the day before. In the current chaotic times, where the old laws no longer applied, killing had become a more accepted practice. The group, now stirred up and aggressive, urged Zhang to surrender the item willingly. Their message was clear. The choice was his, but resistance would come at a cost. Zhang pulled out his radio, and Poo's voice crackled through. The report was urgent. Numerous undead were advancing toward his location. Meanwhile, a little monster with a yellowish gold bag strapped to its back had stormed into a candy store where a squad of survivors had it surrounded. Zhang understood immediately that the bag was today's main objective. He couldn't afford to let anyone else get their hands on it. His plan was clear: retrieve the valuable item quickly and then make a hasty exit. The group behind him, sensing his hesitation, demanded he leave behind his radio, his blade, and anything else of value if he wanted to walk away unscathed. Zhang turned to face them, his eyes narrowing as he remarked on their insatiable greed. The man in the middle, however, was not interested in negotiating. He was determined to act first. In the wake of the apocalypse, he had seen everything change drastically. The people who once troubled him, scolded him, or tried to undermine him were now irrelevant. The girl who used to threaten his job had become nothing more than a plaything, and the leader who once challenged his authority now groveled before him after he had crippled the man's daughter. The world had shifted, and he was determined to seize his power in this new reality. With a steely resolve, he swung his weapon towards Zhang, ready to assert his dominance and secure his position in this harsh new world. In an instant, a blinding flash of light cut through the chaos. The middle-aged man's weapon slipped from his grasp and fell to the ground. It took him a few agonizing seconds to react, his screams of pain finally breaking the tense silence. Zhang's voice cut through the commotion. "When you want to kill someone, remember, others might want to kill you too." With a swift kick, Zhang sent the man sprawling, crashing into two of his companions, who joined in the cries of agony. As Zhang seized the precious item and made his exit, the onlookers could only watch in stunned silence. Soon after, a horde of undead emerged, and the group's fear became palpable. Desperate cries filled the air as they scrambled to cope with the new threat. Inside a nearby building, the sharp, deafening crack of gunfire echoed as several guns concentrated their fire on the door's defense line. Chengze, after dealing with a pile of mutated rats outside, saw Mo return, visibly shaken and pale. He quickly inquired about what had happened, but Mo only muttered that the giant rats had been nauseating. Her concern shifted to Yahello, who was anxiously looking around and expressed her deep worry for her husband, clearly distressed by the uncertainty of his whereabouts and safety. Seeing Mo's distress, Chengze reassured her. Xiaoqin was with the government division stationed in the newly opened district, an area with many buildings but few people and undead. It was also not far from the armored division barracks. He then shifted the conversation, asking Mo why she had just returned and mentioning that he needed to report to the team leader. Mo's thoughts turned to Zhang's resolute figure and the promise they had made. She was about to explain when Chenglong's sudden shout cut her off. The noise they had made had attracted a massive monster. A few people rushed to the window and saw, with a growing alarm, the enormous zombie ape charging directly toward the building. The sight of the monstrous creature was both terrifying and urgent, making their earlier concerns about safety seem trivial in comparison. The armed police squad quickly adjusted their gun muzzles and began firing at the zombie ape. However, as they soon discovered, their bullets had no impact on the creature. The realization hit them hard. If the beast made it downstairs, they would all be doomed. Chengze turned to Mo and urgently told her to help him deal with the zombie ape. Meanwhile, at the 3 o'clock position, Yahello cried out as she unleashed flames from her flamethrower. Chenglong and Xiaohu joined her, their guns firing relentlessly to push back the mutated rats that were swarming in that direction. Chengze watched them struggle against the fast-moving rats when, without warning, a gray arm reached in through the window from below, aiming to grab him. In a split second, Mo's arm shot out, swatting the undead's arm away just in time to save Chengze. But the undead retaliated, its sharp claws tearing into Mo's arm. The close encounter left everyone on edge, battling both the monstrous zombie ape and the relentless undead that threatened their safety. Seeing the scene unfold, Chengze's heart sank. He furiously emptied his clip into the undead's head, his anger barely subsiding despite the relentless fire. Frustrated, he shouted at Mo, demanding to know what she was doing. Calmly, Mo assured him that she was fine and wouldn't be infected. The rest of the group's expression shifted as they took in the situation. Sai Lei, showing a determined resolve, drew a blade and prepared to cut off her own arm, believing that a disability was better than death. She moved to grab her arm, but Mo quickly intervened, stopping her. Mo then revealed the truth. She had taken evolution medicine and was fine. To prove her point, she showed them her wound, which had miraculously healed, and then punched the wall with such force that it cracked through. Mo declared that she was now an evolver and had consumed evolutionary medicine, so they shouldn't worry about her. Her display left everyone stunned and speechless. Pointing out the window, she reminded them that the zombie ape was still advancing. After a moment of dazed silence, the group saw the massive creature drawing nearer. Instantly, they fired all available bullets at it, but normal ammunition had no effect. Then, a burst of gunfire rang out, hitting the zombie ape's eyes. The bullets were from the special ammo Zhang had given her. The zombie ape roared in fury, clutching its injured eye and grabbing a nearby car to hurl at them. Mo's group quickly dropped to the floor, bracing themselves as the car flew through the air toward their position. At that moment, Zhang was in the midst of a conversation with Liang. She informed him that she had encountered a group of thugs and would need to deal with them before proceeding. Zhang asked if she was capable of handling the situation. Liang assured him that they were not a significant challenge for her. He instructed her to seek out Teacher Pu if she found the situation too difficult. As Zhang spoke, he saw several cars hurtling past between the buildings, their chaotic movement clearly the work of the enraged zombie ape. The creature was using every method at its disposal to vent its fury. Zhang was unaware that his first teammate, whom he had focused on after being revived, was facing a life-or-death struggle. His primary concern was ensuring he reached the treasure monster before others could snatch it away, and he hoped to reach Pearl Lake soon. Zhang, still nursing the injuries from his recent battles, felt a pressing need for a healer on his team. In the apocalypse, many survivors didn't perish from combat, but from missing the crucial window for treatment. Medicines were a rare luxury, far more valuable than food and water, and healers were highly sought after. Having just one pharmacist in his team would allow him to fight at full strength without holding back. Hua Hai, observing the attractive woman before him, regarded her with interest. He explained that it wasn't a matter of not letting Liang go, but that advancing further was extremely dangerous. He suggested that staying with them was the safest option. Despite this, he made his way to the street leading to Pearl Lake's road, hoping to navigate the little monster ahead. The leader of the thugs blocking Liang's path warned her that it was dangerous ahead, and suggested it would be safer for her to stay with them. He thought about how Captain Ye had provided him with weapons and evolution medicine, and even arranged a squad for him, but had taken away a valuable card from the wheel. Hua Hai knew that card was worth far more than the medicine, and it was clear that Captain Ye had used him as cannon fodder. However, this woman intrigued him. Hua Hai was not interested in Liang's appearance, but rather in the evolved aura surrounding her, her unusual weapon, and the fact that her earlier phone call had been to someone else. All these clues indicated that she was part of a squad, and despite her strength, she wasn't even the leader. Seeing Liang's unwavering resolve, he decided to let her go, but demanded she share how she had become so strong. Liang's frustration with the group was palpable. She recounted her past life as one of struggle and exhaustion, feeling like a sheep among predators until the apocalypse came and wiped out those who tormented her. The world had changed dramatically. Even though she faced constant danger, she had never felt so liberated and refreshed. She considered herself fortunate to have met a man who, despite his strictness, truly cared about her well-being. Zhang had taught her how to become stronger and survive in this harsh new world. For the first time in years, she felt she could truly rely on someone. Now, seeing Zhang in grave danger while this group impeded her progress, her face hardened with determination as she cracked her whip, giving the thugs an ultimatum. Either they could choose to get out of her way or face dire consequences. At a newspaper stand, Zhang crouched low, trying to keep himself hidden. Captain Ye's military squad was advancing down the road, and Zhang could see purple ants pouring out of a black hole in the middle of the street, ready to attack the soldiers. The total assault had begun. Captain Ye's command rang out. "Kill them!" Instantly, the army's firepower unleashed a torrent of bullets toward the advancing ants. The first wave of gunfire seemed to have a clear impact, and the soldiers' morale surged as they saw their initial efforts pay off. Hiding behind the newsstand, Zhang shook his head, recognizing that these soldiers were in for a harsh reality check. The giant ants quickly regrouped and counterattacked. They stood upright, almost human-like, and began spraying streams of corrosive green liquid from their mouths. The areas where the liquid landed began to dissolve rapidly, causing agonized screams from the soldiers as their weapons melted into blackened, smoking wreckage. Zhang, concealed on the side, weighed the decision of whether to assist the beleaguered soldiers. But as he watched Captain Ye standing atop a vehicle with a cold, indifferent gaze, his resolve hardened. He sneered and decided to head straight for Pearl Lake without further delay. As Zhang dashed away, Captain Ye noticed him, his eyes narrowing with a cold, dismissive snort. Zhang rounded a corner and arrived at Pearl Lake, quickly scanning the area for the lakeside candy booth. He spotted 2 ants surrounding a wooden house, confirming that he was in the right place. Just as Zhang moved closer, a horn blared, and his expression shifted in alarm. The giant black hole on the lake suddenly expanded dramatically. Zhang couldn't believe what he was seeing. The little monster was opening a dimensional portal for the second time. Amidst the blaring horn, a massive, menacing creature slowly emerged from the dark void. The sight was both shocking and foreboding, escalating the urgency of his mission. The creature emerging from the black hole was an unsettling sight. Its entire body was covered in a deep crimson, and it had 3 thick, crude legs in both the front and back, giving it a grotesque, unnatural appearance. Its forearms, similarly grotesque, grew directly from its shoulders and flanks. The creature was wrapped in heavy, pitch-black iron chains, which clanked with every movement. On its head, a single blue horn flickered rhythmically, as if breathing. His eyes widened in shock as he recognized the monster. It was the Chain Prisoner, a notorious being that had become increasingly powerful since the apocalypse began. This creature had broken through the Wasteland's fortress and emerged into the outside world. Now, it bore a level 4 green magic crystal embedded in its forehead. This marked it as one of the first level 9 mutants humanity had ever encountered. Before humanity had any level 9 superhumans, the Chain Prisoner was the undisputed terror. It roamed aimlessly, leaving a path of destruction in its wake, obliterating survivor bases and wreaking havoc wherever it went. It wasn't until humanity also developed level 9 superhumans that a trio of these powerful beings was able to bring it down. That battle became legendary, known as the battle where Xin Fei earned the title of the Slaughter Rose. The enormity of the situation now before Zhang was clear. This was a confrontation with a creature that had once been a symbol of unparalleled. Zhang assessed his own capabilities. Thanks to the evolution medicine and crocodile meat, he was much stronger than the average level 1 evolved. His expertise and knowledge of the apocalypse allowed him to handle level 2 mutants with relative ease. However, facing a rank 4 monster like the Chain Prisoner would be suicidal, so he decided against engaging it directly. He swiftly moved between the 2 purple ants outside the candy store. With precise strikes, he tore through their bodies, retrieved the crystals embedded in their foreheads, and removed their sharpest toes. His primary focus now was to locate and seize the treasure monster with the coveted bag on its back. Zhang kicked open the store's door with a single powerful blow. Inside, the scene was chaotic, littered with corpses that hinted at a fierce battle having taken place. At that moment, Zhang realized he had lost contact with the 2 women. His radio emitted only static, heightening his sense of unease as he wondered what could have happened. Just then, a gunshot rang out from the back door. There, CEO Li was commanding his troops, their guns firing relentlessly. He held a radio in his hand, urgently requesting reinforcements from Captain Ye. CEO Li had observed earlier that the treasure monster had pulled a bottle of evolution medicine from its bag and splashed it over itself. This monster was potentially the day's most significant prize. With its shoulder struck by a bullet, the treasure monster emitted a strange cry. CEO Li, now filled with excitement, instructed his team to devise ways to take down the monster from atop the purple ant's body. The stakes were high, and securing the treasure monster's bag was crucial. Suddenly, Zhang burst into the scene with remarkable speed. The troops, caught off guard, scrambled to raise their guns, but Zhang was too fast for them. He struck with precision, his punches landing before they could even pull the triggers. CEO Li barely had time to lift his weapon before Zhang was upon him, delivering a powerful elbow strike to his chest. With the military gun now in his possession, Zhang noted that Captain Ye had seemingly abandoned all military support for this operation. His determination surged as he forcefully stomped his foot, propelling himself urgently toward the treasure monster. He knew the situation with the treasure monster was about to become widely known, and he needed to secure the bag before anyone else could get to it. Meanwhile, CEO Li, realizing the gravity of the situation, grabbed his radio and urgently contacted Captain Ye. He reported that the treasure was right there, and warned that if Captain Ye didn't act quickly, others would claim it. The urgency in his voice underscored the high stakes of the operation, as everyone raced to secure the prized bag before it slipped away. Zhang pressed on relentlessly, finally spotting the treasure monster by a lake near the plaza. The creature had dismounted from the monster ant and was now leisurely gnawing on a chicken leg it had scavenged from somewhere. Zhang observed that the treasure monster's previously wounded shoulder had fully healed, looking as good as new. Suddenly, the treasure monster turned its gaze towards Zhang, halting its gnawing and emitting a low, menacing growl. At that sound, the 2 purple ants nearby charged at Zhang. To his surprise, these ants were not ordinary. They were level 2 generals. Typically, purple ants were level 1 mutants, generals were level 2, kings were level 3, and queens were level 4 or higher. As one of the generals sprayed its corrosive liquid towards him, Zhang realized it was setting up an ambush. He quickly ducked, raising his head just in time to avoid the spray. The general then spread its transparent wings and began to lift off the ground. Zhang anticipated its next move, swiftly shifting his blade from his right hand to his left and executing a powerful slash. The blade sliced through the wings, severing them from the body. The general, thrown off balance by the force of the strike, crashed to the ground, a torrent of greenish liquid spilling out. Seizing the opportunity, Zhang drove his blade into the general's head, ensuring its death. He then quickly turned and extracted the crystal from its forehead. With the general dispatched, Zhang glanced back at the treasure monster, still engrossed in its chicken leg. The creature remained oblivious to the unfolding battle, allowing Zhang a brief moment of respite as he prepared for his next move. The treasure monster's chicken leg tumbled to the ground as it stared at Zhang in disbelief. Panic overtook the creature. It frantically looked around and began to shriek loudly. Zhang, focused on his plan, moved in with the intent to behead the monster and claim the yellowish gold bag for himself. Just as he was about to strike, the treasure monster reached into its bag and pulled out an item, hurling it toward Zhang. Zhang braced himself for an attack, but as the item neared, he realized it was a scroll. He caught it with his free hand and unrolled it, discovering it was a beginner summon spell. Zhang was pleasantly surprised. Such a skill scroll, especially a well-known summoning skill, was a rare find in the apocalypse. Without hesitation, Zhang gripped the scroll tightly and prepared to learn its secrets. The treasure monster watched in stunned silence as his actions rendered its previous efforts futile. In a desperate move, the treasure monster tossed another scroll toward Zhang. This one was a professional promotion scroll, an item Zhang had paid dearly for in his past life. Now it was being discarded as though it were worthless. His interest in these items grew. He asked the treasure monster if it had any more valuable items, or else he would proceed to kill it. Faced with his threat, the monster quickly produced 2 more items. One appeared to be level 1 evolution medicine, and the other was a profession certificate. Zhang opened the certificate and was astonished to find it read, "Congratulations, you have obtained the profession of gardener." The absurdity of the situation made Zhang speechless. What was once a highly sought-after item now seemed almost inconsequential, yet he couldn't help but appreciate the unexpected windfall. With these new developments, Zhang was both intrigued and determined to continue his pursuit of the treasure monster, eager to see what else it might have to offer. A gunshot rang out, drawing attention. Xiao Hu, intrigued, asked Mo about the type of gun she was using and how it managed to hurt the monster. Cheng Zhe, observing her enjoyment in the fight, finally understood why Mo had left the team for a while. The precise shot had struck the zombie ape's right knee, tearing through the gray skin and exposing the blackened kneecap underneath. The teammates looked on in astonishment, shifting their gaze between the injured zombie ape and the rifle in Mo's hands. Zhang had provided Mo with evolution medicine bullets and this powerful weapon. Despite her impressive contributions, Mo felt that such an expensive reward was more than she deserved. Zhang was the one she believed truly earned it. She explained to her teammates that some things were beyond imagination and almost magical. She promised to reveal more about her newfound strength and the origin of her weapons if they survived the encounter. The formidable power of her gun had forced the zombie ape to pause, lowering its head to inspect the wound. It let out a furious roar directed at Mo. Seeing the zombie ape's renewed aggression, Mo ordered her team to focus their fire on the wound. Just then, someone entered the scene, instructing the shooter to join Director Liu's team. After a moment, the official noticed that everyone was fixated on Mo. Mo, sensing the urgency, urged her teammates to assist her in attacking the right knee of the zombie ape. 4 team members swiftly aimed their guns at the target, seemingly ignoring the official's previous directive. As Mo prepared to resume her attack, the official reached out from behind, drawn to the peculiar nature of her gun. Annoyed by the interruption, Mo elbowed him in the chest in protest. The official reprimanded her, suspecting that her gun might have been acquired through dubious means. He insisted on stopping her to inspect the weapon, adding an unexpected complication to the already tense situation. Mo was fiercely determined to protect everyone's lives. She glared at the official, demanding he get lost immediately. She made it clear that she had no intention of joining Director Liu's team and warned him not to bother her again, or she would kill him. Her outburst left everyone startled. The official, fuming with anger, shouted that Mo was disobeying orders and would face disciplinary action. In response, Mo decisively fired a shot at the wall just beside his ear, using the threat to force him to turn and leave. Chungzu and the others were taken aback by Mo's rash behavior, but couldn't deny the effectiveness of her actions. They wondered if she would be able to stay with the team in the future. Mo, however, was adamant that she had no intention of remaining with the police force. She told them bluntly that aside from the ordinary individuals like her teammates, there was nothing worth keeping her there. Mo expressed her disillusionment with the place, questioning whether they truly understood the purpose of their relentless struggle and what they would ultimately gain from it. Her behavior had seemed odd since her return, but now it was clear. Mo revealed the harsh truth she had overheard. They were being used as cannon fodder for Captain Ye. While Captain Ye could seize the treasure, the rest of them, apart from making sacrifices, would only receive evolution medicine for his wife and child. The revelation left everyone in disbelief, their sense of reality shaken by the stark truth Mo had laid bare. Zhong was taken aback to find that his second profession was gardener. Although it wasn't what he had expected, he recognized some similarities between gardeners and artisans. Both professions boasted multiple skills beyond the standard set. For gardeners, there were two main abilities. The first was cultivation, the skill to plant seeds and accelerate their growth with remarkable speed and efficiency. This ability could lead to some extraordinary results. The second skill was activation, the power to control plants and use them to accomplish various tasks. He recalled from his past life an encounter with a sycamore tree, an evolution of which was so formidable that even the strongest of human and monster factions dared not approach it. Known as the Heaven Tree, its sheer presence was awe-inspiring. He felt a surge of excitement at the thought of commanding mutated plants, imagining the advantages of growing food and producing resources in the apocalypse. Eager to see if the treasure monster had anything else to offer, he asked for more. The treasure monster, in response, tossed another item toward him. He reached out to grab it, but a sudden sense of danger made him wary. He instinctively dodged, just as the item hit the ground and exploded with a loud boom. As the smoke began to clear, a glowing green venomous monster emerged from the haze. It had no crystal on its forehead and was clearly a summoned creature. The blue aura surrounding it radiated intense corrosive properties, making it a formidable and dangerous opponent. He hesitated to draw his blade, fearing it might get damaged. Instead, he quickly plunged his hand into the fountain beside him. As his hand submerged, the water began to bubble and froth, and within seconds, a human-shaped water elemental emerged. With its gaping mouth, the elemental unleashed a powerful stream of water at the glowing, venomous monster. The two creatures clashed fiercely in a chaotic battle. This was a result of his basic skill transference. The summoning was limited to just 1 minute, so he knew he needed to act fast for a decisive victory. The treasure monster, bewildered by his sudden move, glanced at him with a look of disbelief before attempting to flee. However, it only made it a few steps before running straight into Lee's group. Lee's sinister laugh filled the air as he declared, "Kill them!" His subordinates immediately opened fire, their bullets tearing through the air. Zhong, agile and quick, darted behind a nearby sculpture, feeling a surge of frustration. He couldn't avoid the gunfire and was deeply reluctant to see the treasure monster fall into Lee's hands. With the enemy's magazine running low, he seized his chance. He pulled out a pistol and with precise aim, took down 2 of Lee's men in a single dive. The remaining fighters scattered in fear, seeking cover. Taking advantage of the chaos, he charged towards the treasure monster. Amidst the gunfire, he reached the monster, seized it, and swiftly grabbed the prize. In that intense moment, he experienced the most profound emotional upheaval since his revival. Every time he had scrambled for treasure mutants in his past life, the fights had been brutal, with death rates soaring above 60%. The victorious few had always treated the treasure mutants as nothing more than a minor nuisance. Today, he was poised to be the victor, wasn't he? But suddenly, a chilling premonition swept over him. Zhong reacted instantly, dodging to the side. A split second later, he saw a flash of movement. The treasure monster let out a wretched shriek as its mouth lashed out. He narrowly avoided a savage attack, but if he hadn't moved in time, that severed arm would have been his. As he glanced around, his heart sank. He hadn't anticipated this. 3 evolved humans had arrived, attacking with ruthless efficiency. Clearly, they were well adapted to the apocalypse and fought with a level of brutality that he had not expected. He ignored their warnings and decisively grabbed the yellowish gold bag, clutching it tightly in his hand. However, beams of light-speed spears shot toward him, forcing him to pull back. A long spear came dangerously close to his face. If his right hand hadn't been injured, he might have managed to fend off the attack, but in his current state, taking on 3 evolved humans at once was too risky. Reluctantly, he had to fall back. As he retreated, he kicked the treasure monster away, surprising the trio. They hadn't expected him to risk his life to protect the bag. Lee, seeing the opportunity, quickly informed Wang that the target was right before them. Wang smirked, clearly pleased with the turn of events. The leader, fuming with anger, cursed Zhang and ordered his men to focus on grabbing the bag first, ignoring his presence. Wang instructed his partner to secure the treasure while he created a diversion. A fierce battle ensued, turning the area into a chaotic mess of water and debris. The next step was to seize the opportunity and capture the treasure. Wang Ting's team knew they had to wait for the perfect moment to snatch it back, ensuring they made their move at the right time to maximize their chances. The situation with Mo was rapidly deteriorating. The zombie ape had a horde of undead blocking the entire area in front of the building, making it impossible for Mo to get a clear shot. With only one bullet left, treated by Zhang, her options were running thin. The thought of all her efforts being wasted was overwhelming. Just as Mo grappled with her next move, she caught sight of a familiar figure rushing towards her. Pooh. If Pooh was here, Zhang couldn't be far away. With renewed determination, Mo leapt out of the window. Chengze, unable to stop her, could only watch in alarm as she made her daring escape. The reunion between Mo and Pooh was filled with relief and emotion. Before they could fully exchange words, a deafening roar drew their attention. High above, atop a skyscraper, a monstrous fish face emerged, the chain prisoner. The sight was both horrifying and awe-inspiring, an ominous reminder of the chaos that was about to unfold. Seeing Mo leap out of the window with such resolve, Chengze was left puzzled. Chenglong and Xiaohu exchanged determined glances before immediately jumping down to follow her. Chengze and Zai were left frozen, their thoughts racing. Just then, footsteps echoed from outside the door. The secretary, who had previously fled in a panic, had returned with reinforcements in search of Mo. Both, enraged, argued that these soldiers would be far more useful in the battle rather than turning against their own. Chengze, intent on retrieving Mo, decided to follow the path the others had taken. Sai admired Chengze and his determination. Though she longed to join them, her thoughts were with her husband, waiting for their reunion. Realizing their situations were different, she reluctantly stayed behind. Meanwhile, the towering and terrifying chain prisoner loomed ominously atop the high-rise. Pooh informed Mo that the last time she saw Zhang was near that monster. Mo's face tightened with concern. She was resolute in her desire to find him, hoping he was unharmed. The sight of the monster was indeed formidable, but Pooh pulled Mo's hand, urging her to focus on rescuing Liang, who was in immediate danger. While Mo was deeply concerned about his situation, Pooh assessed the situation and concluded that Zhang was likely searching for something rather than actively provoking the enormous monster. She suggested focusing on rescuing Liang first, and then returning to find him. Mo, though still worried, gritted her teeth and agreed. Just then, Chenglong, Xiaohu, and Chengze arrived, having followed Mo's lead. They recognized the urgency and understood the need to act swiftly. Mo's eyes brightened at their arrival. With such skilled warriors by her side, she felt confident they could make a difference. She instructed Pooh to lead the way and emphasized the need to rescue Liang first. Meanwhile, Liang was in dire straits. Surrounded by the mangled remains of her fallen foes, she panted heavily, a painful wound bleeding on her chest. She wiped the blood from her mouth, reflecting on the brutal reality of combat. The thug boss, nursing his injured arm, sneered and ordered his men to target her legs. His intent was to incapacitate her, even if it meant leaving her crippled. The thugs, now intent on killing, raised their guns and prepared to open fire. She, in a desperate bid of survival, used her whip to shield herself with the body of one of the attackers. Just as the situation seemed dire, a voice cut through the chaos. Mo and her team charged in, driving the thugs back. The boss, confused and alarmed by the sudden intervention, demanded to know who they were. Before he could react further, Mo arrived, her fury evident. She landed a powerful punch on him, knocking him out before he could fully comprehend the threat. Mo and her team quickly took control of the situation, rescuing Liang from the brink of disaster. Zhang observed the clash between the two formidable forces before him with a detached calm. The man in front, already an imposing figure, seemed to grow even more powerful with each vigorous movement. His eyes narrowed. This was no ordinary opponent. This individual belonged to a rare and formidable profession, known for its incredible strength. In his past life, Chongmao had also been a part of such a specialized group. These three adversaries, who had faced and survived level 1 monsters, had now encountered level 3 threats, making them a significant challenge for him. Their luck had been extraordinary, propelling them from ordinary level 1 evolved humans to powerful figures facing high-level threats. His thoughts were interrupted by the sudden appearance of soldiers who had arrived on the scene. Among them was a level 2 evolved human, a rare sight that surprised him. Seeing someone of that caliber in a professional capacity was not something he was unaccustomed to, but the timing was notable. A twinge of envy flickered within him. Despite being a reincarnator, he remained only a level 1 evolved human. The presence of these level 2 evolved humans, coupled with the extraordinary abilities of his opponents, made him reevaluate his strategy. The situation was more complex than he had anticipated, and he needed to adapt quickly to survive and possibly turn the tide in his favor. Wang, despite having acquired a level 2 wheel, was frustrated by the lack of level 2 mutated monsters available for him to fight. Even if such monsters were present, he questioned whether he could defeat them effectively. This uncertainty weighed heavily on him. Meanwhile, Chongmao relentlessly attacked Wang with a combination of precision and ruthless moves. As a girl unleashed a beam of light from her hand, Wang instinctively recognized the threat. Faced with both attacks simultaneously, Wang was forced to make a difficult choice. He decided to endure a wound from Chongmao's assault rather than risk a more severe injury from the light beam. His quick reflexes with the spear minimized the severity of the wound, but it still caused him significant pain. This unexpected outcome momentarily threw Chongmao off balance. Seizing the opportunity, Wang clenched his fist and delivered a powerful punch that sent Chongmao crashing through the air. Enraged, the leader prepared to confront the attackers directly. The leader's voice rang out, declaring that the attackers had brought their misfortune upon themselves by coming there. With a swift motion, Wang discarded the long spear, which whistled through the air with deadly precision. The spear flew towards the girl who had unleashed the dangerous beam of light. Despite her best efforts to evade it, the spear struck her left chest with brutal force, leaving her incapacitated and bleeding. Wang's ruthless efficiency highlighted the grim reality of their situation. There was no room for mercy in this high-stakes battle. Wang was preparing to confront the struggling leader when he suddenly noticed a change in the situation. Amidst the chaos, he seized the opportunity and made a dash for it, clutching the bag tightly. Wang's expression shifted from one of focus to annoyance as he saw Zhang trying to escape. With a mix of irritation and grudging respect, Wang acknowledged his skill in evading the others and issued a challenge to him. As he sprinted away, he pondered how he might lose Wang, who was hot on his heels. The ground suddenly rumbled beneath him, causing Zhang to glance up in surprise. To his dismay, he realized that he had run straight into the chained prisoner's territory. The dense smoke billowing from the massive creature created an obscuring haze. With a determined grin, he plunged into the smoke, hoping to use it as cover. Wang, unfazed, followed him into the swirling mist without hesitation. Within the obscured battlefield, he tried to gauge Wang's strength, feeling the pressure of facing a level 2 evolved human. Despite his best efforts, his blade only managed to graze Wang's clothing. Wang's nimble dodging had prevented any serious injury. Frustrated by the ineffective attack, Wang glanced down at his torn clothes. Decisively, he ripped the fabric further, revealing a fierce transformation as he unleashed his full power. On Wang's robust chest was a striking tattoo of a black skull, marking him as a formidable level 2 evolved human. The sight of the tattoo, known as the Black Spirit Soul Devourer, confirmed his realization of Wang's enhanced abilities. This revelation underscored the gravity of their confrontation and the sheer power Wang wielded.